Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is Wednesday, January 18th. I want to welcome everybody to the annual Tallahassee City Commission retreat. We've got a full day where we will go till 2 o'clock this afternoon, and then we have a City Commission meeting that begins at 3 o'clock. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right in. This is your welcome introduction. We are the City Commission, senior staff. So I'm going to turn it over at that, and Mr. Manager, let's get busy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. Let me do this first, too. This facility is a beautiful facility, and I'd like to thank Ashley Edwards, her staff, and so many people that helped put this together. I think it's a great venue, one that we can take advantage of for years to come, and it's open to the public to use in the future. Anybody interested in can check with our Parks and Recreation Department. And we try to do these at different facilities. Was it last year, maybe we were at our electric logistics facility, you know, to kind of show off Tallahassee and what we are. And it's our pleasure to be here and provide support for your retreat this year. Mr. Mayor, we've got a full agenda with presentations. We've included a very complete agenda on a number of topics that you have prioritized, including a full summary of where we stand with our strategic plan that we're about halfway through at this point, a little more than halfway. But also we've highlighted topics that you've prioritized, including the Southside Action Plan that came up at this retreat 2 years ago. There's been a lot of progress on that. I think you'll like what you hear in the presentation today. And finally, the Clean Energy Plan that's been in motion. There's been a lot of community engagement. We wanted to take the opportunity to provide you an update on that. Following that, so we've got, again, a full list of presentations. Different staff that have been working on these topics will provide the presentations. We certainly will follow your direction, but we are prepared to have dialogue during the presentations, however you wish to have that. It could be during or after, whatever your wish is. The expectation is a full commission discussion. We have a lunch scheduled very briefly, and then following that, a commission discussion. I'll point out, I know everybody at this table knows, but for the benefit of everybody watching that's in the room, the City Commission has a regular commission meeting today at 3 p.m. That'll be at City Hall. And so this meeting will conclude no later than 2 p.m. Ideally, and then we'll move to City Hall for another full agenda for today. And so, again, it's our pleasure to be here. Mr. Mayor, we've got staff on each topic. The very first presentation we have scheduled is the Southside Action Plan led by Devin Levins and his team, and we're looking forward to the day.
Excellent. Let's proceed.
Thank you. Devin, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
So,
Microphone, Devin, so that everybody can hear.
is that better? All right, sorry about that. Southside Action Plan, we're here again. Is this clicker gonna work for me?
Yep.
All right, awesome. So just to kind of do a little bit of recap, I think we need to start from the beginning to get us up to speed and then move forward with where we're at. The Southside Action Plan, this was initiated by you all back in 2021 at your retreat, as Reese just said, but we didn't launch until April of 2021 because we needed to get a few things rolling. And once we did that, 2021, we jumped right in. And what was the purpose? We wanted to ensure that Tallahassee Southside offered the amenities, services, and quality of life that the community envisions for the area. I don't think that's much different than what they wanted 20 years ago when we were talking about this, but I think we were able to go and talk to the community and really engage with the community to hear that we do still want to see those things that we haven't seen happen to date. This was done in 3 phases. The Southside Action Plan, we did a community engagement phase. Then we went with a draft plan and solicited feedback from the community on that draft plan. And the third phase is what we're here today for, is that action part. We want to be able to implement the policy updates, projects, and start tracking some strategic objectives to be able to bring back every year to see what we're actually doing and how we're moving forward in the South Side specifically. So this visual will give you a little bit of like an image of those 3 phases. What you'll see here is kind of the community engagement part. That was where we really wanted to get out there in the community. Then put the draft plan out there. So at the retreat, if you'll recall last year, during that retreat, we said, if you guys are good with this, let's go ahead and put it out on the street and start getting some feedback. You approved us to do that. So from January to June 2022, that was out there for the community to provide feedback to us. We had it opened up. We went and still met with folks that wanted to meet with us. And we'll get into some of the ways that we engage with the community during that part as well. And then where we're at today is we have a finalized web plan that we're looking to go ahead and start moving forward to initiate this action. So community engagement methods. If we go back to our phase one, how did we engage the community? What you'll see here is we engaged in a lot of non-traditional ways. That was one of the approaches that we really wanted to take to this, was not do the same thing that we've always done, but actually do something a little bit different. We had community surveys that were set up throughout the community. You could do this online through a QR code. We had survey drop boxes that we used from supervisor elections and put them in the library, outside of the Tempo office. We also did a couple drive-throughs, one at NIMS, one at Town South. And you've heard this before, I know, but just to kind of reiterate that, like, we were really getting out there in the community, really going to places where people that normally would not come to a meeting, maybe like we're in today, would actually come and have those real conversations with us so we could hear what it was from the community that they wanted to see. On that, when we did our surveys, we had 620 responses to our survey, and what you see here is the map of where those come from. And again, like we've told you in the past, some of those are outside of the actual Southside boundary, but those people did have connections to either church, work, or businesses within the Southside boundary of the Southside Action Plan. So what did we find out from this? It really kind of boiled down to 3 categories: beautification, investment, and engaged and active citizens. That is where we really have focused of what the community wants to see. This is where they want to be involved, and we'll go into what that looks like across the board, but again, that was how we were able to really put it into 3 categories that everyone could digest and understand. Phase 2, this was where we launched the draft plan. So again, we have a new format. Typically, these plans are paper plans, what you mostly see in the past. Someone will come to you with a paper plan. Those plans are good for what they are. They can get momentum, but what we noticed with this one was after 20 years, it didn't have the momentum that we thought we would see. So we said, how can we do this differently? So we took a non-traditional approach to say, what is a new way we can do this that can keep it active, engaging, and with real-time information? And we were able to use some of the tools that we have now through GIS to be able to do a web-based plan. This plan can stay up to date with information that we have for the public, so we can tie this into what projects that UUPI or Public Works is doing, what Parks and Rec is doing. Anyone that has a project that's out there on the server, we can bring those right into the web plan. And so that's what we liked about this way of doing things, is that it's always in front of the community. Anytime, 24 hours a day, they can go in and see where we're at that point in time. We had an online public comment period from January through June. We had 4,000 views of the web plan, nearly 4,000 views. And with that, we received 23 comments. Think about that now. We had right at 4,000 folks looking at this, and we received 23 comments. I think this shows us that we're right in line with what the community is looking for, that this plan is actually giving you that information, and what we heard from the community was reflected within the plan that we have here. How do we get the word out? This is one of those things where if you didn't hear about it, you weren't looking for it. We put a lot of stuff out there. We had 16,000 postcards mailed. The utility insights, there were 65,000 hard copies mailed, 55,000 electric copies. We had some news articles that went out, 12,000 social media posts, and then 529 emails of just an email list that we kept from the folks from the survey. So touch points to the community. We were touching the community in any way that we could get out there and really get with them and find out, hey, we've done this, we've heard from you, we want to get responses back. We were trying to keep that communication both ways throughout the entirety of this project. This brings us to the action part for today, where we're at. So what you're looking at here, this graphic, this is kind of where we've tied it all back together. So if you want to understand how this works, the Southside Action Plan, in the past, we would have went with policies and looked at policies and then kind of drafted our plan off those policies. In order to do this a little bit different, what we did here in this phase was we said, we talked to the community, we know what the community wants. Now let's use what the community told us they want to see and influence or inform the policy based on community direction. Let's implement that through our strategic plan, and then this will identify all the projects from both of those that we want to see. Is that clear? Okay.
Yes.
So what we're going to see now from those actions and the projects we're going to see, we want to see public, private, and community-driven investment. And as we move forward this, the way that we've laid this out, that Southside Action Plan should be able to do that through the comp plan and through the strategic plan. And then that'll allow you all to be able to get updates specifically on those things that the community was asking for. Timeline. So right now we're at the retreat. You're getting the update, so there's nothing new there. Tonight we'll have the commission meeting where we'll bring some recommended actions before you, which would be adopt the Southside Action Plan and initiate the comp plan amendments to move this forward. And then we'd have the ongoing projects, and we'll talk a little bit about projects that are already ongoing and what we've seen over the last 2 years while we've been doing this. Then we'll jump into a comprehensive plan cycle. Assuming that this gets accepted tonight, we do the comp plan amendment. we're going to go ahead and go right into the cycle that's already open. We've had all these workshops and all the public comment, so this allows us the opportunity with where we're at in our current comp plan cycle to be able to come right in fluid and run and not have to have any changes, extra meetings or anything like that. It puts us right in there. And one of those main priorities is going to be getting that name Southern Strategy Area changed to Southside Action Plan, which was your goal from day one. And there'll be other things to do that. And then the way we're looking at bringing this back to you is we're calling it a 1+1+5. So you're getting an update today, 2023. 2024, you'll get an update. Then we'll put this into the 5-year strategic plan so you get updates with the strategic plan. That way this stays live, fresh, right in front of you throughout the duration of the Southside Action Plan. So let's talk about some of the projects that we've seen. So what are those community-driven projects that we've seen over the last 2 years? A lot of community events have started happening on the south side. There's been a lot of interest. I've seen most of you all out at those events when we've been there. Solis Southside Festival, 2 years in a row, they've had a really great event. That's what this photo here is from. You can see we had a lot of folks from the community that came out. And you know, a lot of people that aren't normally hanging out in Lake Anita, they were there on the south side hanging out together. There was a Southside Tour of Homes that was hosted by the community. This was a really good event that went along with the Solis Southside. There's been neighborhood cleanups and beautification projects. And these are community driven, but we have assisted in most of these in some way or supported them in some way. And that's what we want to keep doing, is find ways that we can support these community driven projects so the community can initiate, but how do we help those move forward? Because we want to have those tangible projects for the community. Action projects for public capital investment. So this is things that we've done as a city. You'll see that number down there. That's nearly $500 million that we've invested in the south side, and that's in the last 5 years. So that's a big number. But does that really relate to our community? Does that relate to the citizens? Maybe not in the way that we're portraying it there when they're having issues at home trying to pay rent or other things they're doing. But what that does is it allows us the infrastructure in place to do those things that are tangible for the community. So we don't need to slow down any of these capital improvement projects that we're doing. We want to keep those moving along because those in return are going to allow us the option to be able to come back and do those tangible projects that they want to see, like fund more facade improvement grants, have facade things that happen there, beautification. And this again falls in line with that beautification investment and then engaging the citizens along the way to keep them involved in the process. And one thing to note here is you all know that the water sewer infrastructure is something that we've been talking about that we're going to be expanding on. Sidewalks construction is always happening. And then we have blueprint projects across the board that are happening. So again, don't want to stop or limit any of that. We want that to keep going, but also talk about those projects that spur out because of the investment that we made.
Devin, let me interrupt you. If you go back to that slide for me. Commissioners, and you'll note, I think maybe the last time we talked about this in a forum like this, the investment was nearing $300 million. It was maybe $270 million. Commissioner Richardson, I think I've heard you say that numerous times, and I think, I know when Devin showed this number to us, we were impressed by the number, but I think what it tells us is the holistic view and approach that we're taking. That's an enormous investment, approaching $500 million, and we're able to kind of take a wide view, not limit one investment, but all of the things that are happening in the South Side, in particular in the South Side Action Plan area. So I just wanted to take a second and point that out, that as we've looked deeper and broader and wider and identified new projects, that number has grown considerably.
The $471 million, what is the time frame of that? Is that
Last 5 years.
last 5-year investment? Excellent.
Thank you.
Good. And now, we also are going to have private development projects that happen. And this is something that we want us to focus on, but some of those private projects may also be us working with private interests when we talk about our housing programs and things like that. When you look at development for the south side, we don't have as much vacant developable land as we do in other areas of our community. The two areas that you really have right now on the south side that are larger tracts is there's a PUD down near the wastewater treatment plant that has not developed out. You have the St. Joe property that's down by Woodville Capital Circle, and you have the airport. Those are really your three big areas if you were going to look for new, fresh development. What we do have opportunity for, though, is infill throughout the south side. So there's a lot of different lots, individual lots, vacant lots, and those are things that we may see private development or even our housing program come in that they're working with right now to be able to put houses in those lots, which addresses that affordable housing need. It addresses, bringing back more folks to the south side, but it's getting those things built out. And then, again, rehabilitation of existing homes, and then making sure that our projects are aligned with that new vision for the comp plan of beautification, investment, and then active engaging the citizens.
Devin, you mentioned the 3 large tracks on the south side of Tallahassee. One of them you just mentioned is the PUD. Is that the proposal that just went through the comprehensive plan process?
Is not.
No.
This is the older PUD that's been in place for probably close to 10, 15 years, maybe more. And it's a smaller tract of land. I think it's less than 10 acres. Ed, do you know that number off? Okay. It would be right around 10 acres. So it's not a huge parcel, but it's one that's been out there just kind of sitting, that we've had interest here and there, but nothing's ever really hooked in it.
Got it. So is the airport parcel the one that we entertained during the comp plan cycle last year? D.R. Horton came with a proposal. They're looking at the south side. Which project is that? Because that's going to be pretty large as well.
That should be your Woodville Highway, the D.R. Horton did.
Okay,
And
that's Woodville
that's
Highway
just
project.
outside the South Side Action Plan boundary.
Got it.
It's just across the street, which would still affect what's going on in the area, but it is just outside the boundary.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
So talking about these projects and kind of how we just showed you a number there and what's going on, it doesn't happen in a silo within the city, and that's something that we want folks to understand, is that we have multiple departments working across the board to be able to make these things happen. And what you're seeing on the screen right now are some of our different departments that we have and how they play into these different aspects of what the Southside Action Plan would be. Communications has helped us along the way with our messaging. We've had to work with the housing department to figure out what's going on with affordable housing. UUPI, they've been awesome at being able to provide us with what infrastructure and capital improvements are going on. And so what we're trying to show here is that we are working as a team throughout the city, not just this department, that department, but this is a full team coming together to really be able to move this forward within the South Side. And each team is working on pieces, and we're trying to bring that data together to show you a holistic view of everyone's efforts. And this is another way that we're going to be able to show how those things happen through those 3 channels. So beautification, investment, and active engaged citizens. Some departments may only be working 1 or 2 at a time, while others may be working across all 3. Again, communications, we're always wanting to work with communications on any of the stuff that we're doing. Same thing with neighborhood affairs, neighborhood services. But then you'll have other folks that may be doing 1 or 2 of those things and not all 3 at the same time. But we want to show that everybody's working towards those 3 goals. What does that look like on the ground? I think that's where it gets important, right? Is to see how does this look on the ground when we really start talking about what everyone's working on. The Tempo program, they were housed in Southside. We were able to do a storefront. That was one of our engagement strategies right next to Tempo. So Tempo had their office. We took a vacant storefront and we made it activated to look like there was something going on, but it was just to share information about the Southside. Next is housing projects. We got housing projects popping up on the South Side, individual little one-offs, whether that's Habitat for Humanity, it's our facade program. There's stuff popping up all the time with housing and around housing, and that's something we want to highlight and be able to show that we are getting that housing within the South Side. It's pixelating on me. All right. And then streetscape improvements, culture and history, community beautification. These are things that we're seeing happen in the South Side. So each of the photos you even saw was from the South Side of things that are going on there. And really what we wanted to show you guys today was that action's been happening. We've been taking action. The last 20 years, we may not have seen what we thought we would see, and we wanted to approach this in a different way to really be able to bring it forward to a modern way of looking at the South Side. And we know that what we've got here today for you to move forward with you taking action on this will allow us to start moving forward in the South Side and seeing that action continue to happen and grow.
Mr. Mayor, let me also, and Devin did a great job, and he moved quickly through it. This is a, an abridged version of what you have in your agenda material, but he's not done it alone. I'd like to recognize Laurel Harbin, who's at the table with him. She's his partner in crime, and Artie White, who's here. We know him as our planning director, and there's so many more people involved. Devin showed that one slide, which has really been a priority, that we involve all of the city departments, the full force of the city, not just planning and forethought as it relates to land use, but how do we engage the city's resources to bring this about? And I think you see a lot of action that's begun to happen and that we're poised to take advantage of. I think it'd probably be productive. Now, this meeting today, at your retreat, we have no scheduled action. This is a retreat and discussion. However, tonight, we do have an item on the Southside Action Plan, because that's where you will take action. I think it probably would be helpful, Devin, if you can share with the commission, and everybody that's watching and listening, what are those actions that the commission is poised to take tonight?
Sure. Let's go back to, I'm going to go to the timeline. So on this timeline here, the commission actions that we're going to be asking for tonight is to adopt the Southside Action Plan, first and foremost. That's where we want to move forward with, is getting this adopted. That way we can move forward and continue the action part of this project. The second thing is to initiate amendments to the Tallahassee County Comprehensive Plan to update the goals, objectives, and policies. And the first thing of that is to change anything that says, again, Southern Strategy Area to Southside Action Plan. But in addition to that, you would have saw in your documents that we have now looked at the comp plan and we saw things inside the comp plan that were outdated. They maybe haven't been done, maybe they were done but not tracked, but they weren't in line with the beautification, investment, and engaged and active citizens. Now we have made that in line with that process to make sure that anything that we do inside the comp plan hits those three categories of the investment, beautification, and active and engaged citizens. What that means for you all is that if something was brought before this board, once the comp plan has been in place and we get this language in there, if anyone brings anything that's happening on the south side forward and we can identify that it's investing in the south side, engaging the south side, or providing beautification, those should be projects that we go ahead and move forward without any hesitation. So just kind of packaging that up of how that would help you all.
And Devin, if you remind the commission, as it relates to any adjustments to the comprehensive plan, from time to time it requires joint adoption by the city and the county. If you'll kind of clarify, can the city move forward? We know 80% of the land in the Southside Action Plan is in the city. There's about 20% of it's in the unincorporated area. What is the city commission able to do on its own, and what has to be jointly agreed to by the county as it relates to these kind of amendments?
You're spot on with the 80 to 20%. And you all as a board can go ahead and initiate this comp plan amendment without action from the county. They would then, it'll be brought up and we bring it before the joint workshop, but you all can initiate it without their input. So today, at tonight's meeting, when you make that action, if you do decide to initiate, you would be initiating that comp plan amendment.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Commissioner Richardson.
And just a quick question. Devin, what is the public safety component of this Southside Action Plan?
You want to take it?
I would just say the public safety component is a lot of those preventative or getting ahead of crime issues. We think that public safety has its own robust process, but two specific things I can speak to is the youth engagement, such as the Tempo program, and also the investment of Fire Station 17 and possible community facilities there as well. So on the project and program aspect.
Okay. Now, I know that Chief Rebel at one of our meetings gave us a handout where there are 37 community projects that they are involved in one way or another. Are those incorporated in this Southside Action Plan, those that are in partnership with the schools, with community organizations? Because I think that has a lot to do with addressing public safety as well.
Yes, sir. Tracking certain strategic objectives and bringing you back those targets and how we've met them is part of our 1+1+5 strategy. So we need to develop those targets, and we've included what we have as a draft right now on your agenda item, but we'll be reporting back annually and suggesting that you incorporate those into the strategic plan.
Okay. All right. Because I would imagine that a lot of the feedback that we got, and I know Commissioner Williams-Cox and I were at a number of those community engagement opportunities where people talked about public safety and reducing crime, addressing crime on the south side of town and in those neighborhoods. So I would like to see us have a robust component where that is incorporated in the plan.
Absolutely. And I would like to provide one example of how the Southside Action Plan team has partnered with TFD and TPD in the Callan neighborhood. I'm doing community engagement there, and that's something that we'll continue and track for you to see how we're delivering on these promises moving forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I hope y'all don't mind. I have moved with the Benna. It's easier to facilitate the conversation and see everybody instead of leaning forward. And hey, now's the time. We've got plenty of time set aside for conversation and discussion to jump right in. Let me put in a couple of comments too while everybody else is gathering their thoughts. First of all, Dr. Harbin, Devin, excellent job. I mean, fantastic. I know that we apply we apply for awards all the time. I think your community engagement, you look at the tens of thousands of touches that you had in this community, is award-winning, and I hope that there's an opportunity somewhere to submit that plan for consideration, because I think y'all have done an incredible job, and it should be the model moving forward. I think the feedback is absolutely unbelievable. And Devin, I think you touched on the fact that, after putting the plan together, you only had a couple of dozen critical comments, if you will, which shows to me that the team did an incredible job truly capturing the initial data and comments from the public on the front end and being able to put it into a story, quite frankly, that everybody not only understands but agrees upon. And I think it reflects extremely well on the team that we have in place and the great work that y'all are doing. And I wanted y'all to know how much we appreciate it. So let me tell you some of the things personally that I'm going to be concentrating on, and it's the same that my colleagues have been mentioning as well moving forward, and I look forward to hearing more of your comments. And again, we have plenty of time, colleagues, to discuss, so let's open up. This is why we have the retreat, is for us to have these conversations and talk. But first and foremost, Evan, you did touch on the housing opportunities that we have coming forward, and I think it's really exciting. And desperately needed, quite honestly. It is no secret that just about every community across the United States is in some type of a housing crisis right now. In Tallahassee, unfortunately, is not exempt. So we do need to concentrate on good, solid, sustainable development for affordable housing, low income, very low income, workforce. Use your term, we need it in just about every category. So moving forward, I am looking forward to continuously talking about the big picture. You mentioned the three, okay? So keep us always in the loop on how those proposed areas are being developed, proposed to be developed. How does that fit into the big picture? How does that fit into the picture of economic development, specifically the incredible opportunities at the airport? I'll touch on those in a second. But I think we need to not only be laser focused on specific projects that come up for conversation, but also the holistic picture, which is indeed the whole idea behind the Southside Action Plan. I think that as a commission, we are going to have some very detailed conversations. And Curtis, to be honest with you, I couldn't think of a better person to be at the table for the Affordable Housing Advisory Council with your deep knowledge and background. That was one of the reasons why I supported me rolling off and you putting on, because you sit on several of these boards together. But we're going to have a conversation, colleagues, about how we develop affordable workforce, low-income and very low-income housing in this community. Because like you, when I go out and I talk to the building community and talk about literally the cost of construction and how to move forward, it is a disincentive for the most part for the development community to truly get in and build workforce, affordable, and low income. And I'm going to challenge each one of us to become creative. I'll give you a prime example that came from the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. Is looking at different ways on how, yes, the city and the county can work with the development community for the cost of infrastructure, which we currently require the developer to absorb 100% of. Again, we're talking about affordable, low-income, and very low-income neighborhoods. How do we maximize the land trust in the city of Tallahassee with potential developments as well? My point is we have to get very creative if we are going to continuously work to meet the goals of building affordable workforce, low income, and very low income. And yes, folks, we have to think on the neighborhood scale. Curtis, I think you once said it best, or maybe Diane, it was you, when we were at a Habitat build, which Habitat is incredible and is a crucial part of this community. But we are not going to get out of any crisis one or two houses at a time. It's a bigger picture and it's a more holistic picture. And I understand we don't all necessarily agree. I do believe that the city's doing a great job right now with what we are doing with affordable housing. We've got a lot in the pipeline, and I know we're not all on the same page with that, as I've heard. But I'm here to tell you that we need to continuously wake up and think creatively on how to move forward. Number two, Curtis is absolutely right, and I don't mean to use first names, I'm sorry, but this is informal, right? We're having a retreat. We need to concentrate on violent crime all over this community, but while we're talking about the Southside Action Plan, how are we going to move forward to keep our neighborhoods safer? How do we move forward to keep our businesses safer, our schools safer? And again, what are those creative new plans to do so? I think, and Dr. Harbin, you mentioned it, we've got some great programs on the front end, the tempos. I think we all have confidence in Royal King and what the commission will be doing as well. That's why we invested in the program. But at the same time, too, I think it's time for us to roll up our sleeves. And I have made no bones about it with the city manager and with the chief of police, that the dangerous people that have warrants on them in our community, what I hear from the faith-based community, what I hear from the neighborhoods are dangerous people need to be arrested, and that we need to make sure that we're taking care of business. It is a fine line, making sure that we have a safe community, but at the same time, and look, when we had the halftime liquor shooting in this community, the person that instigated that had 8 felony warrants on their head. That person should not be on the streets of Gadsden County or Leon County. And so I am asking law enforcement once again to redouble their efforts to work with the sheriff and all of our community partners to come up with those strategies that keep our community safe as we move forward together. From an economic development standpoint, I think we've got a tremendous opportunity, and we are moving forward with the airport. I mean, with the new build of the international facility, with what we are doing with the Burrell Group and building out the current land that we have available, the recruitment of businesses that are coming, it is truly going to be amazing. I think we need to continue to capitalize on that energy moving forward, but we have to keep in mind from a transportation standpoint, from a retail business standpoint, from a Leon County school standpoint, how this also positively or could provide challenges or hurdles to the Southside Action Plan as well, and make sure that we have a holistic picture moving forward. And then finally, on a more specific measure, we mentioned the proposed fire station on Lake Bradford Road, which, I do support. But I am also truly excited about the other opportunities that can work in conjunction with that facility. You mentioned a possible community center. I would like to put on the table something that is desperately needed in a lot of our neighborhoods, that we could set the example of a state-of-the-art child care facility, maybe one that could even operate 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, or 24 hours a day. This is a concept that has been talked about for quite some time, about child care for the unusual hours, whether it's night times or weekends. And specifically having neighborhood child care facilities that truly work. And we have some prime examples in this community. So as we move forward with the development of that fire station, I want us to think big. I want us to think creatively. I want to set the standard in the model. And I want to see how we can meet the needs of the community, being laser focused on specific things, in this case child care or a community center, along with meeting the needs of the fire department. To make sure that they keep us safe and protected. I'll be quiet at that, and let's just continue the conversation. What are your thoughts, comments on the action plan as proposed? And by the way, I do support the action for tonight's meeting, and thank you. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, and thank you for, I can only imagine everything that went into that engagement. It's probably the most extensive engagement that I've ever seen, definitely in Tallahassee, so I think that's pretty incredible. I have a few questions and comments. So I was on the website. I have not found like a plan. Like, is there just a written plan?
So you're not going to find a written traditional plan.
Okay.
What you're going to find in this is how it lays out what the community wants to see, and then what the plan would be from there is to track those metrics through the strategic plan in the future.
Okay. I would love to see, I think it's always good to have, in addition to something like this, a written plan. A lot of people, especially people like my parents, are not as familiar with how to use these things. And I can just say, for me personally, it's a lot easier for me to take notes and underline when it's just one plan. So if I need to go do that and kind of copy and paste and make a Word doc, I will. But I think it's a best practice if we can have both for people who want an alternative option. But I do agree with you and think it's great that we have something like this, and I think that makes sense, and for a lot of people is more user-friendly. Maybe that's just my preference, but I can follow up with an email about that. I have some more specific questions about the comp plan amendments, and I was wondering if you could explain or just go into a little bit more detail about the decisions you made for the revisions. And I'll tell you where I'm coming from, and that's just that what we had, in my opinion, had a lot more detail and touched on some important topics that what we are proposing does not have. Now, I know that this is not the only section of the comprehensive plan. We have sections that talk about housing, we have sections that talk about the environment, and so I understand that. But I was surprised to see some of the things, removed and not included, so I was wondering if you could speak on that, and specifically where, if I could find my notes, you mentioned the beautification, investment, and engaged and activated citizenry, kind of how we arrived at those three.
Devin, let me start,
Mr.
Commissioner,
Behringer.
if I may. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Devin can speak in more detail about it, but Commissioner, I think it's a great question. We know that the Southside Action Plan has existed for now 2 decades, and it was a good plan. I wouldn't say it was a bad plan. It had a lot of detail, had a lot of goals, had a lot of aspirations. But I think what we found largely is it was ineffective. And so what we've tried to do in concept, Devin will explain in more detail, can we shrink it and make it more effective? Can we create more flexibility to make it more impactful? And so that's kind of, and so when you asked about a plan, and even the comprehensive plan itself and the amendments to the comprehensive plan, where you see it become more outline-oriented, more goal-oriented, that's the logic. Now, of course, we take the direction from the mayor and city commissioners, but it could be counterintuitive. You say, hey, more detail results in more outcome, but what we know is over 2 decades, we saw very little outcome. And so our approach has been, listen to the residents, get the feedback, clearly delineate the priorities and adjust to the priorities as we see positive outcomes. Devin, if you can help me explain it a little better, but that was the concept and the approach.
And Mr. Manager, let me jump in and remind you, we have Artie here that can comment as well from a historical perspective, but I was actually the county commissioner that proposed the rewrite of the comp plan to streamline the comp plan, because, one of the first things that we learn in planning school is that comprehensive plans are not built to be specific. That's your land development code. And too many times over the past decades, we've had too many of the specifics that were in the comprehensive plan. And so unanimously, the city and the county at the time decided that by proposing the rewrite and streamlining the comp plan and putting the elements of the specifics in the other documents that complement the comprehensive plan, that we could better serve the community. Am I off, Devin? Or that's kind of the reason why we were pulling Dr. Harvey.
Right, and if I may, I also have a master's in planning and am familiar with what a comprehensive plan does and what land development code does. But when I don't see, anything about housing or and where the plan had something this is not the plan, the comprehensive plan, but not separate from the Southside Action Plan, had specific goals for the South Side as it relates to housing, to incentivize and increase not only affordable housing, but very specifically middle-income housing and market rate housing, because we don't want to just have all low-income, extremely low-income housing in the South Side. We know that's already not the case. There's all kinds of housing, but we don't want that to be the only kind of housing that we incentivize and promote. So just specifically the beautification investment and engaged and activated citizenry. If you could just, again, explain how we reached those.
Sure. And let's touch on one step back real quick. One of the things is just a note, just in general, when we looked at the comp plan, there was a lot of outdated policies, aspirational policies that were still sitting there that said they should have been done by, I think, 2010. And so that was one of the places that we started there. And we had no record necessarily of what was done or how it was done, and policy didn't directly cause action. And so we were trying to find ways in this to make sure that whatever policy we had would directly impact an action to happen. And so in order to get those three things that you're asking about now, the investment, beautification, and engaged and active citizens, that was what we did. If you look at the survey results from the community, those came directly out of what we saw there. Hold on a second. The people were when we asked the people what was the most important thing about the community, it was the people priority was number one. Higher than anything else was people. And then what they want to see was not necessarily government involvement, but how do we get the community involved to be able to make decisions along with the government? And so that's where we got to the active and engaged citizen part, because the active and engaged citizens want to be part of that investment and they want to be part of that beautification. So that's what we were doing here with the comp plan, is putting that in. Again, we said we started, instead of writing policy, we started talking to the community and then building our policy based off what we heard with the community, and kind of taking it back to that simplistic level that this is what they want, but the way we do this is now we do it through projects and action with the Southside Action Plan.
Okay, so, okay. I think my last comment would be, so is the goal, correct me if I'm wrong, so the goal that is being proposed is basically that we have a plan. Like, I'm being sincere, like, the goal that I read in the original document is much more what I consider to be a goal and a visionary statement. And then the new goal basically says, the first line, a plan shall be developed and monitored.
The response to that would be, we can have a goal, but if we don't have an action to make the goal happen, so that's where the plan comes in place, is to initiate that action.
No, of course, and I understand how they complement each other. It's just, it says goal, and I'm not trying to be overly semantic. I think it's important because people do read this. The community does read it, and, at this point, I would have loved more time to have reviewed this. I have felt, other than the community engagement events, which are stupendous, I haven't felt like I've had any opportunity to review this kind of final proposal with the, and I know we're adopting it later tonight, but in the future, I would love to be able to review this with more time to give input and hear from staff. I'll say that I definitely find the new proposal to be harder to read and understand. I understand that the whole thing here that we're talking about is how you connect this to action and to specific action steps. This, to me, was not as directly linked as I would have liked to see. But beyond that, I have some questions about what in the plan is really touching on environmental protections, because we know this is one of the most environmentally sensitive areas. And that is connected to my question about what recommendations you have, because I'm not sure if I saw any at this point, about reviewing our land use and zoning. Because, that's directly related, if not the most important part, visually, to beautification is the kind of land use and zoning we have. Industrial uses, commercial retail, where you've got outside storage allowed, people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing, and we're not, as far as I know, giving code enforcement the support that they need to enforce that, fine people who are repeat offenders and disincentivize that, because that's a huge, I feel like that, if we don't get over that, we're not going to be able to get what I hear from the public and what you're telling me you're hearing about beautification.
I would say you got to remember the comp plan is not one goal or one policy. Environmental policies are in the comp plan, housing
Correct.
policies are in the comp plan. So just because we consolidated down this one little section of the much bigger comp plan, those things are still incorporated into the comp plan. Some of them were duplicative throughout, so that was another reason
Right.
that we were able to move
And
those.
I've read the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
I know that, no, I'm not talking to you, I've read the comprehensive plan, but there are specific, this is included in the other plan, and I was just asking for the justification
Yeah,
of
and
that.
that was it. Really, it was just if it was somewhere else in the plan and we could address it through other means, we were really focusing on the beautification, engagement, and investment, beautification, and active engaged citizens, because that's where the community stands right now. That's what they want to see are these things. And there are other pieces within the comp plan that directly relate to that.
Right.
That once we have the Southside Action Plan in place, those policies, and we do have the comp plan rewrite coming up for the larger scale comp plan. So that will be looked at in even more detail once we get there. But in order to make something happen now, we had to move forward with some type of action, and that would be the action to get projects moving on the ground.
Okay, so is there anything being proposed as far as land use and zoning is concerned?
Not at this point, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Other comments? Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome back, everybody. It's a new year. First, just on that point, I would say I think the problems we've had in the past, the plan was not ineffective, right? We didn't have the political will to really implement some of the goals that were laid out in the past. So we see a lot of these dates have passed because we didn't put in the hard work, we didn't put in the money or the priority to really see the South Side get the investment that it was due. That was the overarching problem. You know, much like the Urban Forest Master Plan, we could have 1 million plans, but if we don't have the political will to go implement it and get it done, it doesn't really matter, right? I mean, I think that's really the history lesson we learn on the failures of the previous plan and what it's going to take to achieve success moving forward. I'll save further comments about that for the actual agenda item. I will touch on housing a bit. I think, and I agree, Mr. Mayor, we have to look widely at all our different options. And I think, especially when we look at extremely low-income housing, there probably isn't a private sector solution. Nobody's coming to the table to build residential units that can be rented for $300, $400, $500 because it doesn't make financial sense for anybody. So either we can subsidize that tremendously at a huge loss to government, or we can look at how we can do it differently. What we've seen historically, the most successful programs for low-income housing have been public housing. If you talk to people who have lived in public housing, they are very fortunate and thankful to have that opportunity. What we've seen nationally for 40 years is a major disinvestment in public housing and its upkeep, and it's left us in this predicament. So I think when we look going into the future, trying to adjust that piece, a public housing component has to be on the table because nobody has stepped forward with any type of solution to house the most vulnerable that I've seen. And there's one solution that we know works because we've seen it work for decades. We've seen it work in other countries, and we have to have that be part of the conversation. Another part of the conversation has to be rent stabilization. Over the last couple of years, rents have gone crazy. I mean, I'm looking at places I used to live that are 60, 70, 100% more than when I rented there just a decade ago. You know, people's wages aren't going up. Their housing costs are increasing tremendously. And we have the authority and the power to help the people laid out in state law. You know, we saw in Orange County, a supermajority of their citizens supported this. When we look across the state of Florida, this is what people are concerned about. This is what people are worried about is how they're going to pay their rent and where they're going to live if they can't find a place. We don't want Tallahassee to be the city that people have to leave because they can't find a place to rent. So I think those two things, while yes, let's talk about workforce housing, let's talk about new development increasing inventory, but that's not going to solve the problem of the rent crisis. That's not going to solve the problem of the low-income housing crisis. So I hope when we do have this conversation, we expand it to include everybody. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, and along those lines, I think it's important to recognize that, yeah, you're right. I think in Commissioner Williams-Cox, I think you brought it up at the last retreat last year or the year before about the neglect of the city commission in previous commissions to the south side of Tallahassee. And I think that's why this commission has invested the $500 million in the past 5 years moving forward. And I know we're all proud of that as well. I do think that we need to have a serious conversation and you know, where is the Tallahassee Housing Authority with their master plan of our community and moving forward? I would be curious to know. We're all familiar and are very excited about the new development on Orange Avenue, but where are we going from there? What else do they have in mind on the horizon coming down? I would be interested in knowing more about that as well, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. This is outstanding work.
Yeah.
We've come a very long way in such a short period of time after something sat on the shelf for 20 years collecting dust. Thank you for having the willpower and the endurance to go through all of this and to bring it down from a 30,000 foot to where we can digest it. Everyone is not going to read a comprehensive plan. Everyone, we're saying we want to save the environment. Everyone's not going to print a piece of paper. I appreciate you all bringing it into this arena.
That's right.
In an online fashion, because you know I was talking to someone the other day about what's happening in the communication between us old folks and the young folks, and I was talking to someone even older, and they reminded me that our rearing came differently, and that some of our younger folks are looking at, you know, we're looking at computers and machines, and so we older folks are having to learn to adapt and to do these things, and so that's why we have classes being offered at the senior center, right, Ashley, and all, so that we can make sure that all residents get what they need, and if there's a need for paper copies, I'm sure those can be provided. So I don't want anyone to think that this is the only way that you can receive and digest this. I think, though, that there's been some conversation at the table that makes me believe that there's been some conversation somewhere else prior to coming here. Today, we're looking at the Southside Action Plan. We're looking at what we've asked you to do 2 years ago. You're bringing it back to us in a way that we can continue to hit the gas and move with it. Being a resident of the South Side, not from academia, not with any master's degrees in what you all do, Dr. Harbin, you PhD, so I believe you all, you know what you're doing. I trust what you're doing because we have conversation, not just in these settings, we have conversations and relationships, because when I want to know something, I call you. When I see something that I need you to pay attention to, I call you. So I am pleased with what you're presenting to us today. And as a resident of the South Side, I believe that we have our finger on the pulse of what folks on the South Side want. We want the same thing on the South Side that people have on the other sides of town. That's what we want. Not rhetoric, not outdated policies. We want action. And when the other parts of town are being developed, no one's talking about low-income housing. No one's talking about things that we only talk about when we're talking to the South Side. So we want to have those same conversations. We want what everyone else wants. And I believe we're on our way with this plan. We have the political will, Commissioner Matlow. We now have the political will. So while we have it, let's do it. Let's move forward. I am happy to hear this morning that public safety, housing, economic development, all of these things are going to be a part of this. But I must say, and I don't know where Commissioner Matlow is now, but I must say, when I hear public housing, I trigger. And those of you in the room who look like me, you know why. Public housing has sometimes been equated to the projects. And I want to make sure that we understand that when we use the term public housing now, that is not what we're trying to say. We're not trying to house people with same problems on top of one another just to get them somewhere. In this community, we do have good affordable housing that has come online. We have housing ribbon cuttings that we've attended where the rent for a one-bedroom apartment is $300, $300 and something dollars. A three-bedroom, two-bath apartment is $500 and something dollars. While some may not be able to afford that, it is better than an $800, $1,100 rent. So we are doing those things that we can in our community, and in welcoming private investors to come and do it by making sure we use our policies to promote that. To me, it is very smart to allow others to come to town to use their money to help us with our crisis so that we can use those dollars. And city manager, tell me, based on what we have in the pipeline and what we've done, or what has happened through private investment, what would we have had to spend from our budget to make that happen?
Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioner. I'm going to ask Abena Ojatayo. She's a little closer to it, but I shared last night information with you guys. We talked about it, and if I could draw this distinction, the number of new units that are completed, in process, or in the pipe, and the number moves every time we talk about it. So last night I shared with you the latest and greatest. We're at now about 2,800 units that are in the pipeline. Let me tell you what that means, because I think people have asked, and I think it's a good question. These are certified income-based units. They're not subjectively determined to be affordable. This means you have to be at or below the area median income to qualify. Many of them, in fact, I think about half of them are at 60% of the area median income or less to qualify. So these are subsidized dwellings spread throughout the city of Tallahassee. So at 2,800 units, I actually asked Abena to kind of give us a ballpark. What level of investment would it take to build those? Let's say you wanted to build 2,800 units, and Abena, I'm sure she has the number, but it's a big number. I'll ask her to share
I feel
it.
like I need a drum roll. I want to appreciate the really smart people in the housing department who look at this every day. And when they give us that ballpark, we're looking at projects telling us this is the cost to develop this unit. And it's upwards of $560 million. This is $500 million of in private investment and public investment that's being leveraged to get these projects done. So we really do not have the capacity at all to do any of these units on our own, but what we see is working, and I hear this from my colleagues across the country, is that the government has a really unique tool with our regulatory process, with our zoning. These are tools that nobody else can leverage. And what we're doing, and I think with your leadership is showing results, is that we leverage policies, land use flexibilities, development incentives that really have become attractive to private development. A lot of these folks are coming to the table having leveraged state and federal tax incentives. You've taken several actions in the past to allow bonds, TEFRA bonds, to be issued for projects where we didn't have to make a financial incentive ourselves. So there are a myriad of tools in the toolkit to use, but these are really $500 million worth of projects when we talk about the 2,800 that's in the pipeline now that's spread around.
Let me add, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, let me add to that, because it's
Come back to you, Mayor Pro Tem.
it's a really good conversation. I'll make 2 points. So we talk about 2,800 now.
Right.
And you say, well, you know, what's that mean? How does that fit in? Prior to your prioritization of affordable housing, and this is a portion of affordable housing, there were 4,200 units in inventory. So we're talking 2,800 on top of 4,200. It's more than any of us have seen in our lifetime in Tallahassee. So we've seen a lot of gains. Abena has shared, and I'm going to tell her story, by the way, because she shared it with me. I thought it was totally appropriate. She was just on panel in Houston talking about this kind of topic, housing resiliency, putting your community together. And there was a member on her panel because they were talking about incentivizing affordable housing. And the conventional wisdom is you do it with dollars. You do it directly with dollars, that developers need dollars from your local community to do it. We know there's a lot of federal and state dollars that are available through tax structures, and it's working. What we also know, and what we should not undervalue, is the leverage of policy. So you have taken direct decisions to allow hotel conversions, for example. That is an unbelievably powerful tool to make it happen, and it doesn't take the dollars, it takes the policy. And so as people come and they approach our housing department, they ask what incentives are available, what can you do, whether it's density bonuses. These instruments are working. They translate to dollars to others. It's harder for us to calculate it. It's harder for us to monetize it, but they are worth a significant amount. I think the evidence is that if you're nearing $600 million of private investment, that you've leveraged with a fraction of that works. And so each of these projects are unique. Well, I'm not aware of one that's come and we've said, hey, we don't have anything to help you make this project work. I'm not aware of a single project that's left town or inquired that said, hey, we can make this work, but we need more from you. We would bring that to you if that was the case. And the team,
That's right.
Benna and her team have done a great job to target those things necessary. In some cases, the Magnolia Oaks that was in your presentation earlier, we know that was a $500,000 CRA incentive. That's a, cousin to this organization, if you will. That's a agency that you guys are the board members of. I don't know how much that project was, but if I had to guess, that was a $40 million project. And by the way, it looks great. I mean, for anybody that's driven by that, it is a fantastic place, and that's certified affordable housing. That means those units will be affordable to those that make less than the average income in our community. I'm sorry to go on.
Yeah, and Mayor Pro Tem, coming back to you, but also want to clarify, when we talk about the environmental challenges, I mean, we have seen this community very successfully overcome and be able to develop even with environmental challenges. I think a prime example, I'm looking for Dr. Jummerville or Wayne, you could tell me, the Bradfordville water standard is still the strongest standard, isn't it, in Leon County, but yet, we've seen the growth on the northeast side of town. So when we are faced with the environmental challenges on the south side, I feel confident that through our policy and our expertise, that we can come up with the creative measures to be able to develop in a sustainable way and address the housing crisis as we move forward. So I don't want that to be a full stop as well. Mayor Pro Tem, I've taken up your time, and then I've got Commissioner Porter that would like to speak, and Commissioner Matlow.
Okay, that's okay. What and the dean. I just want us to make sure that we're focused on the right thing.
Yes.
First things first.
That's right.
Southside Action Plan. If we want to have a robust, even more robust conversation about housing, then pull that out. But that's not all that the Southside Action Plan is about. I appreciate what you all have done to go and find all these other plans with the neighborhoods. I appreciate the fact that you all the departments are working together, you're collaborating. Energy action is being put on this. Everybody is all hands on deck. And you've asked the community what they want. You didn't send them off to go do something. You went to them to ask what they wanted, and we, the community, have spoken. And look forward to continuing to be engaged on what we're moving forward here. What I do not want to have happen is for this good work to be overcast by any other agendas, innuendos, or what have you. The people are looking for us to do something other than talk. Mm-hmm. They're looking for some action. And this Southside Action Plan is a step in that right direction to deliver to the citizens who are expecting us to do something to help them to enjoy their lives here in the city of Tallahassee. There are those at the state level who have said that Florida is free. So people are moving here. People are coming here because they say we're free. Remember, here in the city of Tallahassee, we're operating out a 4.1 millage rate. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know how much longer we're going to be able to hold it there, but just remember, all the things that folks are saying that we ought to be able to do, we need to do this, should be doing this, and should be doing more of that, at what cost? Right now, we're maximizing where we are as best we can to make sure everyone gets, maybe not all that they need, but what they need and some of the wants. So I just want to say to the team, to the entire department, the entire city, all of the departments, you're doing a great job. I appreciate this. There's been more action taken in the past 2 years than in the past 20 years. There's more housing in the pipeline in these past couple of years than has been, as we say, in many of our lifetimes. You know, some of us are younger than others. But we're moving in the right direction, and we don't need to stop. So thank you, Devin, Dr. Harbin. I stopped by this table earlier today, and it's the Southside Action table right here, and everyone's a part. It's a party, and everybody's invited. But you got to bring some positive thoughts, roll up our sleeves, as you said, Mayor, and let's keep moving. Let's get this, hit the gas, keep our foot on the gas.
Commissioner Porter.
Does Commissioner Richardson, did you want to speak?
If you had,
Go ahead, because I've spoken.
all right, thank you, Mayor.
Sure.
I don't know that there's a whole lot more that needs to be said.
Right.
But what I can tell you is, I'm speaking from a position of having skin in the game. I've made the investment. 30 years ago, my wife and I decided that we would build our home. Build. And you all have heard this before, but I will continue to say it until people hear it and believe it and think that they can do the same thing, and that's why we did it. Because we believed in the south side of Tallahassee. We built our home there. We've been there now. Next month will be 26 years that we've lived in our home, in the neighborhood, the Tuskegee neighborhood where we live. We've raised 2 beautiful daughters in that same neighborhood. And the reason that I ran, and I've dedicated probably half of my adult life in Tallahassee, after I came here to go to school, serving this community in various capacities. And the reason I did that is because I knew that there was a lack of representation of certain segments of our community. When I ran for the school board, I saw the inequities that existed in the public education system in this community. And so rather than complain about it or turn a blind eye to it, I decided I would run for the school board and be where the decisions were being made. And I think somebody may have mentioned the half-cent sales tax that we passed. No, that was at the chamber event, I'm sorry. Mentioned that. Well, you know, I had a lead role in helping to make that happen. And we see how that has benefited our school district. I served in the legislature and made it a priority to address those communities that had been neglected and had not had the resources invested in them that other parts of the community had. And I thought after I left the legislature, my political career would be over, but
Here you are.
having been, and having lived on the south side of town and witnessed the neglect and the lack of appropriate infrastructure and housing and poor environmental conditions, and there was nobody representing our area who walked those streets, who lived in those neighborhoods, who talked. I didn't have to do a survey. I didn't have to go and stand out in front of Piggly Wiggly and do a survey. All I had to do was walk right next door and talk to my neighbor, or right across the street and talk to my neighbor, or talk to the neighborhood association presidents on the south side of town about what the needs were and what we needed to do as a community, as a city, to make those things happen. And so that's what brings me to where I am today. And we talk about this Southside Action Plan that sat on the shelf collecting dust for 20 years. That was the neglect, whether it was a lack of political will or whatever the issue was that prevented it from happening and being implemented. It didn't happen. And yet we saw growth and development happening in other areas of this community. And we were paying the tax dollars to help support that. As a member of the original Blueprint Committee, again, we didn't begin in that process, addressing the issues, the infrastructure issues that were necessary on the south side of town to create housing and commercial development. And so when we came back after 20 years and established the Sales Tax Committee, as vice chairman of that committee, our chairman was Steve Evans, I and some of the others that served on that committee, with the support of all the others, made a point to make sure that we addressed the infrastructure needs on the south side of town. And the city manager has mentioned that earlier this morning. Of the 32, is it 32, Mr. City Manager, infrastructure projects that we have coming online in the next 5 years, 18 of those are scheduled blueprint projects.
Yeah,
18 of those are scheduled for the south side of town. That's huge. That's phenomenal in this community. I've seen it in the years that I've lived here, the years that I have been involved in this political process. It's not happened before. This Southside Action Plan that we have before us today, I think is moving us in the right direction. Devin, thank you and your team for the work that you all have done, because we're not going to let this be something that sits on a shelf. It doesn't have to have all the pretty, and I can tell you, you know, my neighbor is not looking to read a comprehensive plan. She's not interested in reading a comprehensive plan. What she's interested in is knowing that our neighborhood is safe.
That's right.
She's interested in knowing that we have the appropriate infrastructure in place so that we can have what others have in other parts of the community. You know, the academics can read the plan. What they want to see is action and things happening, dirt being turned, housing being developed, businesses relocating to the south side of town, to create jobs, and that will help us to address the crime issues in the community if people are working and they can afford to support themselves and a family. So I'm comfortable with where we are because we are making considerable progress. And so I'm just looking forward to us continuing to implement this plan and address the kinds of issues that have stagnated the south side of Tallahassee in the past years in terms of its growth and development. Now, the one thing that I would caution us about, because we've seen it happen, we've seen examples of it in the city of Tallahassee, and not just Tallahassee, but other cities throughout the state and nation, is this issue of gentrification.
That's right.
We've got to make sure that those neighborhoods stay intact. Those established neighborhoods, the Tuskegee neighborhood, the Gaither neighborhood, Bond neighborhood, Providence. And so that is an issue that we always have to keep in the back of our minds too as we move forward with this issue. And as a board member of the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, we are interested in housing, and not just low-income housing on the south side of town, because, you know, I've told our executive director,
We need all of it.
I don't want to see all of the low-income housing congregated on the south side of town. It should be dispersed equitably throughout this community.
That's right.
And so we need to make sure that doesn't happen, and that we have housing that everyone can afford at every level, and have a mixture of housing throughout the community. So again, I am very impressed with what staff has brought before us. I think it's our responsibility now to move this forward and show our community that we are in fact committed to making this happen. And to make Tallahassee, you know, one of the things I tell people all the time too, one of the things, my vision for the city of Tallahassee is that she has twice been designated an All-America city. But my vision is that wherever you live in this city,
Yep.
that you feel it is an All-America city. And I think we're getting there. We've made considerable progress in that regard over the past several years, but we've still got a ways to go, and I think this plan will help to get us there. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Wiser words. Colleagues, let me tell you where we are. I like how, I'm coming to you in just a second, Commissioner Porter. I like how this conversation organically is kind of taking place on the item. You know, the way how the agenda was structured was we were going to have a presentation on Southside Action Plan, strategic plan, clean energy, and then come back after lunch. I would like to kind of continue with this format. I think this is healthy, the way how we're talking on the item as is. I'm coming in Commissioner Porter, then Commissioner Matlow. It's 10:30. I would like to also have the strategic plan update and discussion that'll flow into lunch. We'll come back after lunch. We can have the clean energy plan update and discussion, and then talk about whatever else is on our mind. But is everybody on board with that structure? Excellent. Commissioner Porter, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. I agree with that plan. First, I want to make a clarification about I'm not asking for a bunch of paper copies of anything when it comes to a plan. And as a 30-year-old, it's just something I would appreciate. But I can do that on my own. It's not a big deal. I also want to say that I am excited about this plan. I'm looking forward to moving forward. And I never doubt this commission's commitment. I never doubt our goals and intent, and I never doubt any of that of our staff either. But I would like to see a time where I can, as a commissioner, ask questions of staff without there being this implication that I don't trust staff. I'm accountable to the people who elect me and who can vote me out if they don't like what I'm doing or what I'm saying. That is my primary responsibility. And so none of it is personal. I don't think asking questions is delaying action. I don't think hoping or expecting that we all be involved when things like this come to us along the way. I think that's what we're supposed to be doing in conjunction with experts. I was not elected to be an expert. I was elected, as we all were, to use our judgment. And I think when we have these discussions, like I feel like we're having today, I would love for the assumption not to be that I don't know what I'm talking about when I ask questions. And that's not pointed at any one person. That is just something that I feel is a theme when I'm asking questions, and I would ask for that respect. Thank you.
Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, I know we're talking about the Southside Action Plan and how that relates to housing. I also agree with Commissioner Richardson. I mean, I think the housing conversation that we kind of sparked here is broader than just the Southside Action Plan, because housing affordability is a crisis on the south side, the west side, the north side, the suburbs, wherever you are, whatever income level you're at. The real estate market is affecting you right now, and as interest rates go up, it's going to affect a lot more people, and I think we recognize that, and I do want to. We're doing a lot of great work bringing in new units, getting them into the pipeline, and getting new development, but we also have to have the talk about there's an opposing force working against us, right? When an out-of-town developer can come in and buy a mobile home park and take 100 units that were affordable, and overnight take 100 units and that make them no longer affordable. So if we gained 2,800 that we were working on in the pipeline, we just lost 100. How many units that were even affordable 2 years ago that rents have gone so high that somebody making minimum wage can't afford to live there? That's a metric that we have to have our sights on, because new units are great, new affordable units are great, but as we continue to see existing affordable units not become affordable at all, we don't know what our net gain of affordability is. How many people, even making more than minimum wage, how many units are actually available for them in the community? That's the metric we need to know. If we had 10,000 units that were affordable for minimum wage workers, how many units do we have now? Not just how many units exist, how many new developments we've had, but how many people can actually go out and get an affordable housing. Because when people call our office and they're very concerned about their rent increase or what somebody who bought their property is jacking up their rent and they're looking for a place to stay, it's no consolation for me to tell them that there's projects in the pipeline. You know, they want real answers then. They want help finding an actual place where they can go sign a lease and afford to live there. So I know it's a greater conversation, but I don't want to lose sight of that in the back and forth based on what we're doing and what we can talk about to achieve even more going forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem and then Commissioner Richardson.
I just wanted to, Commissioner Matlows, what do you tell them? You tell them what I tell them. Contact Kimball Thomas, Abena Ojentaya.
Right.
Because that we have a department whose job is to help with rapid, Abena, tell them what y'all job is. I'm in Goodwill. Yes, I do shop at Goodwill. I'm in Goodwill, and I don't, you don't know who knows who. Someone walks up to me in my personal space, say that they need help because this has happened, and they need a place for them and their children to stay. I called Abena from Goodwill and said, please contact this person because this person needs such and such and such. So this is what we do. So tell them what you do, Abena.
I did it just yesterday. Matter of fact, I had a similar situation where a constituent called for rental assistance, and we directed them to Abena. I mean, that's the appropriate direction. Abena, 2 seconds.
Yes.
There we go.
Happy to
Let
help.
me speak for her. So Abena does a lot of things now,
Right.
and which includes, I mentioned it earlier, just resiliency. So the housing's a piece of it, and she has an entire team. We mentioned them earlier. Dr. Kimball Thomas, Jean Amison, she's our housing director, Anita Morrell. They work together as a team. And what we've insisted upon is the entire city staff is available to help in any way. So,
That's right.
Commissioner, I appreciate you calling that out. Bena's an excellent resource. She knows where to get it. My guess is oftentimes she's not even the one doing it because we have a team doing it. But we're going to get it where it belongs and make sure we
Well,
follow
unfortunately, I
up.
have her number.
Yeah, I'm glad.
Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Commissioner Matlow, you raised some excellent points, but I would tell you, too, that we have partners that we have partnered with in the community, the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium being one of those. The mayor has asked me to serve on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, Council, and there are some excellent representatives from the housing community on that committee or council. And I can tell they have made some tremendous progress, and we've got some work to do, and I'm looking forward to working with them to address the housing needs in our community across the spectrum. You know, it was interesting, and I'd like to tell this story. You know, we cut the ribbon at Aspire, the retooled hotel, and you know, we had people complaining that they weren't affordable, but 25% of the units were occupied the day we did the ribbon cutting. Mm-hmm. So they were affordable for somebody. And so we're looking at a spectrum of affordability, low income, workforce, for those that can afford the Aspire units, it's affordable to them. But we need to make sure that we have affordability for a wide spectrum of individuals and families in our community. And that includes the work that we do with the Housing Authority. I don't know that Orange Avenue, the redevelopment and revitalization would have occurred without the support that we gave them through the CRA. And the support that we have given, I was about to say, and the support that we've given them through the city. That wouldn't have happened. And so, yeah, we do have a number of initiatives going on to address the housing issue here in Tallahassee and specifically on the south side of town, but it's broader than housing. It's all of those other things that the community indicated was important to them in the community engagement initiatives that staff and some of us were involved in. And so that's where the focus is, but it's all of that other stuff. It's commercial development, it's housing, it's environmental protection. All of those things are as important on the south side of Tallahassee or as they are in any other segment of this community. But right now, this is where we are. We're not going to neglect or overlook those issues because there are ways that we address them, just like we address them in any other area. But this is where we are now. These are the things that the community said that they wanted to see happen at this point, and all of the other services that we provide will still be wrapped around that and provided. So, I'm excited about where we are and where we're headed with this, and I think as a commission, it's incumbent upon us to take a leadership role in making sure that this happens and working with our staff to see that we're making considerable progress in a timely manner to make these things happen. And I know that all of us are committed to doing that at this point.
Can I make
Thank
a
you, Mr. Mayor.
quick clarification?
Sure.
I know Commissioner Richardson and I were there for the ribbon cutting, and I know he is excited that he was inspired and inspired. But the name of that, the Days Inn redevelopment is not Aspire, it's Allura or something like that, I think. Somebody in the room may know. It's a terror.
So that's it.
Okay,
That's it.
it's an A
Okay.
word, it's an A word.
Excellent. Devin,
My bad.
Paul, thank y'all. Let me wrap this up by saying, I agree with at least the majority of the commission. I think that y'all have done a tremendous job bringing this plan back. Certainly do appreciate it. Obviously, if our colleagues have any further questions, I know that y'all will work with them to provide any and all the information that they need as well. I am extremely pleased as your mayor of the direction that we're heading. We've got a lot of work to do, but to you and the team, excellent job. Mr. Manager, yeah, we'll take a sec. Mr. Manager, we'll take the opportunity to pivot back to you to introduce a strategic plan update and team, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll roll right into this. This has become a staple of your retreats since you adopted the strategic plan several years ago, and it certainly provides us a good way to measure our progress. So the strategic plan is very comprehensive. It covers 7 different areas. It has more than 130 targets, which we measure ourselves against. And so as we moved through this, now I believe that we're in the 3rd year, we've got a good feel for progress. And I don't think anyone would expect that we're 100% capturing all of the targets we would have set out. There's some that you're going to overachieve, others that you're on course, and others that you may be delayed. And so we wanted to give you a big, wide snapshot of that. We'll drill in on a few and certainly engage in the conversation. It was a great conversation on the Southside Action Plan. We look forward to that on this, and I think this is a good measure of how we are progressing in a way that you can measure outcomes for the priorities that the City Commission has established. Thomas Whitley is going to lead us in this conversation. He's joined by numerous team members of Strategic Innovation. And for those that don't know, that department is the clearinghouse. They don't necessarily own it or operate it or even bring it to conclusion, but we have a really strong line of communication with all the departments that carry out these goals every day, whether it's TPD or whether it's our airport, underground utilities. Everybody participates in these variety of goals, and some there are multiples. There's clear accountability and understanding of that. And Thomas and his group provide that clearinghouse. So Thomas is going to walk us through the presentation, Commissioner, and we certainly are open to discussion and more feedback as necessary. You've got the complement of all the departments here present today.
Great. Dr. Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager, Commissioners. We have just completed the 3rd year of your 5-year strategic plan. You've got your 7 priority areas: economic development, impact on poverty, organizational effectiveness, public infrastructure, public safety, public trust, and quality of life. As the manager said, there are more than 130, there's actually 134 individual targets in the plan that And we don't expect you to read this while it's up here.
Thank you.
But this is to give you a bird's eye view of the targets in the plan, to get a sense that they touch every corner of our government. And you can see on here we have them color coded with green, blue, and yellow dots. The green is to signify that these targets have been achieved, blue that they're on track, and yellow that they're still in progress. And what you can see from this is that nearly 90% of our individual targets are either achieved or on track at this point. We feel confident about that. We feel like that's a good spot to be in, just completing the third year of the plan. We've got more work to do, and we intend to do that moving forward, but we feel good about the position that we're in at this point. As the manager said, we're going to look at a couple of these. A couple of these you've already begun to discuss here this morning, and so there's opportunity for more discussion or more information if you're interested. And so we'll drill down in just a few of these. We obviously don't have time to talk about all 134 of them this morning, but just to bring a few to light. So we'll start first with economic development. Our goal here is to advance the city of Tallahassee as a competitive, innovative, and sustainable regional economic hub. Now, the international processing facility at the airport has already been mentioned. They have a specific target there to complete the construction of that by 2024. You attended the groundbreaking in May of last year. And we've got a construction photo. That's probably, there's probably been more work done. David could tell you, it's, I think, right outside of his office, more work that's been done since that picture's been taken. But for those of you that were out there at the groundbreaking, you'll know that this looks quite a bit different than what it looked like out there at the groundbreaking that day. This is, obviously, I think we all understand the importance of the international processing facility as a step that's necessary to establish the foreign trade zone in our region, and we know that once that's established, that will help improve economic resiliency in our community, create 1,600 jobs, and have an annual economic impact of more than $300 million. Staying at the airport, we have a target to have an additional 100 acres of land leased out at the airport. You've already discussed some today. I know that's been a big priority of the commission, the available land that is at the airport that surrounds the airport, and how under your leadership we can best maximize that land for economic development in our community. You've taken action already this year. We've got a couple up there between those two, Burrell and Aero Center. Between those two, that's an additional 27 acres of land being leased. Those together represent $30 million of private investment, over 600 jobs, and $79 million of economic impact between those two developments that we're seeing take place out at the airport. We set a target in 2019 to invest $25 million in additional stormwater capacity enhancements with a goal of improving water quality and mitigating flooding inside the urban service area. This is a cumulative goal, and what you can see is we've already achieved this. We've invested since 2019 nearly $34 million. We believe we're on track to double this goal. And so I'll take a second there to say that as this was the first comprehensive 5-year strategic plan for the organization, there were a number of targets that were stretch targets. There were some that probably as an organization, as a commission, we weren't exactly sure how we would meet them. Some of them we'll see like this and we'll say, okay, we doubled that, maybe that wasn't a good target. But if you look at our baseline in 2019, that was $9 million. So it made sense to set a $25 million goal there for the next 5 years, and we're making significant progress on that in stormwater capacity enhancements. We'll move, and of course you can stop at any time, or if you want to ask questions at the end or have discussion later. We're going to move to impact on poverty now and just hit a couple targets here. Our goal here, our priority area in impact on poverty is to be a leading community partner that actively connects residents to resources that remove economic and social barriers. You know, we talk a lot about tempo. Y'all talk a lot about tempo. It's been, I think, an extreme success. And we had a goal, you set a target to reduce the number of disconnected youth. We estimated that to be 7,000 by 30%. I think Dr. Thomas will tell you that was a very, very lofty goal. We have achieved that already. We've reduced that by 33%, and I know that Dr. Thomas and his team are not stopping. We also know that one of the best ways to reduce our population of disconnected youth is to connect them with education and employment opportunities. So we set a target because I don't think anybody was sure how many of these disconnected youth would be able to effectively engage. Set a target for connecting 100 of them with fair and living wage employment opportunities. Just 3 years in, we've nearly doubled that goal already. So that will continue to grow, and you can see that that's a cumulative graph. It's the light yellow on there is maybe a little bit difficult to see, but what you can see is significant jumps. And I think that speaks to the continued and increased investment that you have made as a commission in the Tempo program. We also know that because we take a holistic view on housing affordability, that an important part of that is how much it costs to live in your home. And so we spend a significant amount of time providing energy efficiency grants, audits, and rebates to our community. We set a goal. You'll see this one, just to give you an example, we marked as on track and achieved. We're calculating as on track, but this is an annual target. To have 6,000 of these annually. There's over 8,000 that we did in fiscal year 22. So we've achieved that annually, but for the purposes of our overall tracking, we're considering that on track until we achieve that 5 years in a row. But you can see that in addition to the grants, the audits, and rebates that we provide, we also provide residential and commercial energy efficiency loans. And just last year, we provided over $2 million, $2.17 million in residential energy efficiency loans. We know that this helps improve basic affordability for our residents all across our community. We also have an initiative to increase residential density within the city limits. Y'all spent a significant amount of time already this morning talking about housing. We've talked a lot about the House America goal. We set a lofty goal. You set a lofty goal last year to have 2,200 units in the pipeline by the end of December, and to have 100 units for extremely low-income residents. The manager has already stolen our thunder on this, but you got the information hot off the presses last night that we now have 2,798 units from 26 different projects that are at various stages of development, and of those, 163 are certified for extremely low-income individuals. And we've also, as a part of this, rapidly rehoused more than 250 individuals. You can also see there that we've issued 54 multifamily building permits to create 925 dwelling units across the city. We talk a lot about the balance between single-family homes and multifamily homes. We know that balance has historically maybe been around 50%. That balance is growing. We are becoming more dense. We're increasing the density at your direction. And I think that speaks to the leadership that y'all provided from a policy perspective, and also the work that our growth management departments and others are doing to ensure that when individuals come that want to invest in our community, provide housing opportunities, that we're continuing to work with them to increase opportunities for our residents. We're going to move now to public safety, where our goal is to be a safe, resilient, and inclusive community. So we have an initiative to implement proactive, community-based solutions to enhance public safety. These are wide-ranging, as you know. One of the most successful has been the Neighborhood First Plans, which is some of the first action that y'all took as a new commission a few years ago. Y'all have approved over $19 million for the 3 adopted plans between the CRA and the city for the Greater Bond neighborhood, the Frenchtown neighborhood, and the Griffin Heights neighborhood. And you know that updates to the Providence Neighborhood First Plan are nearing completion as well. Another community-based and proactive solution that y'all have taken leadership on to implement is the TEAM unit, our mental health mobile response unit. Since its inception, this unit has served 2,300 individuals experiencing a mental health crisis. And we've got a graph here to show you the breakdown of what these dispatch outcomes have been. It's a little bit difficult to read. That extremely large bar that you see is outreach. So just a significant amount of just good old-fashioned outreach that's happening from this team unit. You can see a number of these individuals are experiencing mental health crises, and so some of these outcomes are unfortunately what we would expect. With transportation, transports needing to occur, individuals maybe needing to be Baker Acted. But you see a lot of welfare checks that have happened there. You see a lot of referrals that are happening. And their goal is to meet the residents where they are in the situation as they're experiencing it, and to get them the help that they need as quickly as possible. They have also, one of the goals that y'all had when y'all established the team unit was to help redirect some of the these nonviolent mental health calls from the normal TBD response structure. And they've helped, since their inception, redirect over 950 of those calls.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Just
Commissioner Matlow.
a quick question. On the team unit's response, do we know how many of those calls are still resulting in arrest?
That I don't know. This is the, we may have somebody here that could answer that question for you.
Chief Revel, do we have somebody here from the department that can answer? The question is, how many of the calls that went out actually ended up as arrests?
I don't have that number, but I'll have it for you in 10 minutes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Matt, Commissioner, is that good?
That's good. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do you understand the question that's being proposed? Okay.
Thank you. We also have a goal to reduce violent crime by 10%. This is a target that is in progress. As we all know, overall crime and violent crime increased across the entire nation during the pandemic. There's research that will be done for decades to better understand that. Tallahassee was not immune to that, and what we can see in 2022 was that we began to see a leveling off here in Tallahassee. That is, we believe, a result of your continued investments in the Tempo program and community policing, your recent action that you've taken to allocate $1 million a year toward addressing gun violence. So we see a leveling off there. That's a priority of yours as a commission. We know that, and we're continuing to track that as well. We'll move and highlight just a couple in quality of life, where our goal here is to be a creative and inclusive community with beautiful public spaces that protect and promote our resources and our culture. We know that access to green spaces improves a community's physical and mental health and overall quality of life. And so we continue to work toward every single resident in the city of Tallahassee living within a 10-minute walk to a park. One of the ways that we're doing that is increasing green spaces and increasing the number of parks. So you set a goal to have 100 parks by the city's 200th anniversary in 2024. When we started this plan, there were 88 parks inside the city limits. Today, there are 94 parks inside the city limits. We have a plan. Ashley is probably a little stressed about the plan, but we have a plan to get to 100 by 2024.
She said she's not stressed.
Look, if anybody can do it, Ashley can do it. We know that.
Yeah.
And similarly, when we started this plan, we calculated that 80% of our residents lived within a 10-minute walk to a park. Today, that's 87%. We continue to work on that to ensure that everyone that lives inside the city of Tallahassee has good access to open and green spaces.
Is that linear park?
Mr. Mayor,
Commissioner Porter.
thank you. Can someone speak to, because that is really outstanding, and I feel like a lot of people might not know that, that they are a 10-minute walk from a public, or a park or an open space. Is there anything we're doing to, promote that or let people know that? Specifically on kind of not just promoting our Parks and Rec, but that?
I don't know how regular that communication is, and of course our communications department could speak to that, and our parks department. They have a good map
Okay.
that has to be updated pretty regularly.
Right.
We've relied on some of our GIS folks to help us make these calculations. There are, as you know, there are parks, there are green spaces, there are trails all over our community. And so it's definitely something that we continue to promote. And as we promote the quality of life, which we think is what makes Tallahassee, Tallahassee. But I don't think that we can over-promote that.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Commissioner, I think another great example is the collaboration between the city and the county for Tallahassee, which shows the overall interactive map of all the city, the county, the trails, the connections, and how we're moving forward. So, yeah. Hey, quick question. Do we have a solid date yet, Ashley, when we're cutting the ribbon on the cricket pitch and the pickleball courts?
Allison and I are working on schedules to coordinate that in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Sounds great. Sounds great. Dr. Whitlam.
The mayor's referencing the new park that will be in the Southwood area. So another one coming online right as we're speaking, it's not included. So there's continued progress there. Also under quality of life, you have an initiative to promote diverse participation at city-organized and city-sponsored festivals and cultural events each year. Last year was, I think we would all say, a bit of a banner year. Held the inaugural Martin Luther King Jr. Day Parade and unveiled some historic markers as well. You obviously had great events earlier this week, continuing that this year. Hosted another inaugural statewide Journey to Emancipation Conference, which drew over 900 attendees to raise awareness about Florida's emancipation date and related historical topics. Held the 2022 Capital City Senior Games, which drew over 500 participating athletes, and hosted a Disc Golf Pro Tour Silver Series event at Tom Brown Park. You probably know that Tom Brown Park, the disc golf course out there, is consistently ranked as the #1 disc golf course in the state of Florida. Hosted this this tournament there that attracted 388 players from more than 30 states and multiple international participants.
Yeah, let me put a pin right there real quick. This is something I would love for our team, and I've talked to Ashley about this, to really dig in. We got a crown jewel in the disc golf. I don't play disc golf, so I'm kind of new to learning about this. Not only is it one of the best in the state of Florida, I believe we are ranked in the top 100 worldwide for disc golf courses out at Tom Brown Park. It is a huge sport here. We hosted the equivalent of the U.S. Open in Tallahassee with a pretty large purse. I think it was a $25,000 purse for the winner. And people came from all over the world, literally, to Tom Brown Park for the disc golf tournament. I think this is something that we can elevate to the next level. Working with the National Disc Golf Association. I know the demand is there, Ashley, as we are planning out CIP for the next 5 to 10 years. We should constantly be thinking about new disc golf courses that we have, how to utilize our trails and in our parks and double up, which you all do an absolutely phenomenal job doing. But I do want to put a pin. This is a very exciting time in this particular sport. Here in Tallahassee, and I think that there's a great opportunity to capitalize on it. Pickleball as well, to be honest with you, as growing of a sport that is, in the way how we're bringing our courts online. We do a great job with tennis, golf, some of the other recreational opportunities, both passive and active, but those two in particular, I just kind of wanted to keep on the radar. So, Commissioner Porter, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say, pickleball is a big thing too. I had a meeting recently with some seniors, and they were saying, we want to see Tallahassee be the pickleball capital of the world, which I thought was a fun idea and something, that we should capitalize on. I think too, with losing, unfortunately, the Red Hills horse trials, that there's sort of this opening where we can invest in that, since that won't be as consuming of our time to collaborate with. So I'm really excited about all of this.
Well, and I agree with you, Commissioner Porter, and I think that there is an opportunity with the closing of Red Hills in our community of time, resources, and finances to redirect. And I agree with you. I think something that would be a lot of fun to throw out is to having a huge downtown pickleball tournament, shut down the streets during the summer. I know it'll be hot, But nonetheless, that's a time when we're always trying to activate, and Commissioner Matlow, I know, is our member of the Downtown Improvement Authority. We're always looking for ideas on how to activate downtown. During the summer months, having a huge festival and tournament might not be a bad idea. But we need to think creatively, specifically around these sports, because I think that there is a huge opportunity to capture in Tallahassee.
The last individual target that we plan to highlight here this morning is in public infrastructure. We have two goals in public infrastructure: to be the leading publicly owned utility that supports a growing and progressive community. You know that City of Tallahassee Utilities was once again named the best public utility in the country recently for a second time. And then also to be a city with an efficient public transit network supported by well-connected roads, sidewalks, transit amenities, and public transportation. We've highlighted this goal here: percent of our fleet to convert to electric, hybrid electric, and CNG by the end of this 5-year plan. We've set that target at 25%. We are at 15% today. We may not sound like a lot, but when you know that when this plan started in 2019, that we were at less than 2% of our fleet that's electric, you see the work that our entire organization's been doing, from Star Metro, from Fleet, all across the organization. Different departments have been doing to make this a priority based on your priority. This obviously ties in the clean energy plan, which we'll get into in just a moment. We've also, with your direction, taken action to create the Power TLH, Public Electric Vehicle Charging Pilot Program. This program is in the design phase, and we've currently identified 4 public charging stations for this program. We've got a map up there where you can see where those public charging stations are. So this is just one part. You can, I don't know if you can read those. You've got obviously the plan at the Northwood site, also on Dupree Street, Van Buren and South Adams, and then the new Orange Avenue Park at Meridian Street. So those are, that's the extent of the individual targets that we had planned to highlight here today. Again, just a few, just to give you a flavor of where we are, and the plan tried to show you kind of a bird's eye view overview of the progress that we're at, completing the 3rd year of the plan, and to look at a few individuals. We'll, of course, take your direction, any conversation or questions that you have, Mr. Mayor.
Excellent. Let's open it up for discussion. Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you, and thank you for those updates. Overall, you have the on track and achieved. Do we know like what percentage are we on track plan-wide, or are there goals that we're falling short on?
We have that, and I ran through it quickly, Commissioner.
Okay. There it is. Okay.
We've got it tracked here. So what you see on track and achieved together is 88.8% of the targets. So we feel like that's a healthy place to be, just finishing our 3rd year.
Okay, and I know some of the goals I think we set were probably pretty lofty. Fresh food sources within, I think, a mile of every residence or neighborhood or something like that. That would really take a tremendous lift. Are we seeing the targets that are in progress, not on track? Are they out of reach, or is it just we need to do a little better on some of them?
You know, they vary, Commissioner. That's a good question. We showed one that was in progress. It's violent crime. We have a couple others that are in progress. Targets that were set to complete the Southside Transit Center by 2022. We have been hit with pandemic delays like the entire rest of the world has. And so, a construction project like that, which is still a priority, we still continue to, we're moving forward on that. That's one that has been delayed. It's in progress because of a delay like that. So they kind of vary from target to target.
Okay. Another thing, I don't think it's in the strategic plan. I'd have to check, but we had a conversation about officer and residence programs a year or 2 back, and I was wondering, did we put that in the strategic plan, or was that just a general conversation?
I believe it's in the neighborhood plans. Is that correct, Abena?
Yeah. That's right. I think a couple neighborhoods had entertained that idea. It's articulated in different ways, but it's all around the public safety goals of these neighborhoods. I know Griffin Heights has discussed that as a neighborhood, and there have been some discussions with PD and with various offices, but that is a neighborhood-led initiative.
In the neighborhood. Okay, great. Oh, that's all I have.
Excellent. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you, Thomas, for a very robust and easy to follow update on the strategic plan. I wanted to mention to Commissioner Matlow, you raised a good point about the fresh food within certain mileage. Was it a mile or whatever? I can't remember what it was. But at any rate, I am aware of what is being done. We may not have been able to achieve that yet, but with the vibrant neighborhoods and vibrant communities where plots of land are being converted into community gardens. Also with, I don't know whose department it is, but I've attended some classes with graduations for individuals who have gone through our plan to learn to do the gardening and what have you that needs to occur, so that they can do that in their neighborhoods. And many of them, is my understanding, some of them are doing that. Amanda, you may be able to speak to that, but for the lack of being able to attract grocers in some of these areas, what's happening is that we're looking at ways to engage citizens to provide some of that for their communities through those community gardens. One of the things that I would just mention, and I've had some conversation with, I can't remember who at this point, but we talked about partnering more with like a Florida A&M, because of, the A in Florida A&M is agricultural. And so they know something about gardens. In fact, they have their farm in Quincy and the Great Farm here on the out near I-10. So there are some things that we may be able to work with them to leverage more of it. I know that we also have our fresh fruits and vegetable market days, farmers market on the south side and in downtown and other places. I think if we make sure that we have a schedule of when these things are going to occur, and that we make sure we announce it. When I've gone to them, they've been well attended. I saw, and I don't know, somebody from Neighborhood Affairs may be here or from that area. The seniors come and they have like these little books or whatever that they use to purchase their stuff with. I just saw this money exchange taking place. It wasn't money. And so I think that that's helping us to get closer to providing those fresh fruit and vegetables in our community as well. So we may not be there yet, but I think that there are some things that are happening that are helping us to try to get to that goal, and I'm very appreciative of that, and glad to see that is happening. So thank you all for what you're doing. I'm sorry that you did not have a picture of or mention the Earth, Wind, and Fire concert that took place. Those are the elements. When we talk about the environment, that's very important. Earth, Wind, and Fire came to downtown, to the it wasn't the Adderley then, but it's the Adderley now, theater. And so I have been very impressed with some of the dancing that has taken place in that place. Some who dance probably shouldn't in public, but people are talking about it because they're seeing it out there, and they know that it's good to come to the amphitheater because it's good entertainment there. So kudos to Downtown Improvement Agency, Downtown Improvement Authority, and others, Tallahassee Tourist Development Council, who are bringing these events downtown, and others who are having events and festivals downtown. And I am really proud and pleased of the activities that took place on Monday in our city. People are talking about it, and that's what we want all over well, I hadn't been in touch with everybody all over the world, but in social media world, people are really talking about the parade. They're talking about what happened. We're at the Adderley now. We're no longer at the amphitheater. We're at the Adderley, and that means something to some folks. And so we're gonna talk about how we need to market and leverage that even the more, because right now we're kind of limited on what all we can do there. But once you've changed the name to something world-renowned, we've got to do more. People are going to want to be here, and we want folks to come to Tallahassee and help us to achieve our strategic plan. So thank you, Thomas,
Yes,
and your
Commissioner.
team.
And I'll just add for just for the good of everyone here, the listening public, that you asked a question about the percent of residents living within a 1 mile radius of a food source, and that stands at 84% right now.
Oh, okay. Mr. Mayor?
Sure, Commissioner Richardson.
I want to commend the staff for the work that they've done. I want to commend the city manager for the leadership that he has provided in this. I think when we started along this track, we didn't have a comprehensive strategic plan. We had strategic plans that were developed by individual departments and they were tracked, but we did not have a consolidated strategic plan for how we were going to move our city forward and metrics for how we determine if we're making progress towards achieving those goals. And we have that now, and we can share that with the community. We can see where we need to invest resources more strategically. And I think we're in a good position. And I think certainly that makes us, as we've been designated so many times, one of the most livable cities in the state of Florida, because we're able to provide these kinds of amenities and services and programs for our citizens. And we can show them on a day-to-day basis on our social media sites just where we are, what we're trying to achieve, and the progress that we're making to get there. And so again, I want to compliment the city manager on the leadership that he has provided and the staff for the work that you have done to get us to where we are in achieving these very admirable and sometimes lofty goals for our city.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with you, Commissioner Richardson. I just wanted to throw out a comment or an idea in case it was something we ever did want to consider, thinking about the events on Monday and how incredible that was. I just wanted to put out there whether if we would want to have a discussion at another time about, you know, having more food trucks or having even just like things like a hot dog stand or an ice cream stand in Cascades or, you know, in some of these parks that are within a 10-minute walk to kind of, if there's programming and recreation and things, it's more likely for people to come and those spaces be vibrant and not become dilapidated in places where crime can take place or, you know, that kind of thing. So I don't know if that's something that we would ever want to consider, but it's a discussion I'd be interested in having. So I just thought I'd put that out there.
Excellent.
Can I say one
Yes,
more
ma'am.
thing? I promise this
Yes,
is it.
ma'am.
I just
Take
thought
time.
about the year in review that is being published and being put out there.
That's right.
That's to me, is a communication tool, and kudos to our communications staff and team who put that out there, and kudos to everyone who's working to have something to put in there, because you're meeting your goals and accomplishments, and I think that tells our story. One of the things that I was really frustrated about prior to coming to the commission, and then once I got here, was that a lot of things were happening here in the city of Tallahassee, but it wasn't necessarily being communicated. And so now I think that it is being communicated better and wider so that folks know that these are things that are currently happening in our city. I'm proud to share it on, you know, on social media and with other cities, folks from other cities, about what it is that we are doing. And I think that it is important that we tell the story, because no one can tell it better than those of us who live it. And so thank you for putting out a beautiful document that has pictures, it has big letters, and easy to read words so that folks can understand that this is a good place. We have our opportunities for greater, but right now we are doing okay. We're doing very well. We're doing better than okay. We're doing very well, and we're able to communicate it. So thank you all.
Excellent. Couple of comments, and then we'll bring it in for, it's almost lunchtime anyway, I guess. So, Mr. Manager, you know 4.5 years ago, I campaigned on the creation of a strategic plan when I first ran for mayor, and I could not be more pleased with the hard work and dedication of this commission, getting this idea up and off the ground, and of course, of our incredibly talented staff for the execution and bringing us to where we are today. And nothing's perfect, but boy, we are definitely heading in the right direction. Dr. Whitley, great presentation today. And I think you've done a really good job outlining some of our successes, but really where we need to focus and how we move forward from here. A couple of ideas as well that I want to put on the table, and I will formally be bringing these up tonight under my time at the end of the city commission meeting. So it has been about 10 years, I believe, since Richard Florida's study naming 32304 as the poorest zip code in the state of Florida. And while I had questions to begin with methodology and data sets, nonetheless, we have major challenges. However, I also believe that for the past decade, this community has really rallied, and it's time to measure to see if we have been able to move the needle. And so tonight at the commission meeting, I would like to introduce an item to come back for the city commission that we put out an RFP for an academic study of the impact of poverty on our community, specifically in the 32304 neighborhood zip code, to see if we have been able to move the needle at all or where we need to continue to focus. I think that another academic study is going to play in well with our strategic plan and help keep us focused. And tonight, I'll just be asking for an agenda item to be coming back for discussion at the City Commission. I also do not want to lose sight of the fact that 2024 is our bicentennial. By the way, Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, meet me at the Adderley. I love it. You brand it, and it's good to go. But I really would also like us to formally start truly engaging on the bicentennial and what that entails. And so tonight also I would like for an agenda item to come back, Mr. Manager, under your leadership and under your teams of, okay, what does 2024 look like for this community? Who's taking the lead in this community? Is it Visit Tallahassee? Is it the city? How are we working in conjunction with the county? Who are the players? And what are the ideas moving forward? I agree. I don't think we should have 10. I'll go on the record and say we shouldn't have 10 concerts at the Adderley. We should have 20 concerts at the Adderley during the bicentennial. It should be a year of celebration, but what does that entail? And finally, I do think that this commission has the opportunity to make its mark and that we should begin planning. I think that one of our parks in achieving our goal for 100 parks by the bicentennial should be a bicentennial park. And I think that we can put our heads together with community involvement. Is that downtown? Is that somewhere else in our community? But I think that we should capture the opportunity to create a bicentennial park with a time capsule and other ways to commemorate where we have been and where we are going, more importantly, and be able to cap off our goal of 100 parks by the 2024 bicentennial. A couple of thoughts. Any other comments moving forward? Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I agree with everything you just said. That sounds really exciting. I'm wondering if, Mr. City Manager, will someone be able to give a brief update of where we are with that process tonight? I mean, I think I understand you to say you're going to ask for something more in-depth with some action items, but might someone be able to just provide like a 5-minute, 10-minute update tonight, maybe?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. That's all
great.
for me. Thank you.
Any other comments, Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem?
Since I was going to save this for our time, but let me just go ahead and do that cue. Let me cue it up.
Yeah.
I have been working with a group of citizens regarding looking deeper at how we eradicate poverty.
Yes.
And this group has been a group of organizations already formed, already doing the work, coming together as a collaborative group, not excluding anyone, but coming together to begin to put together a plan, conversation about what that could look like and how it could be funded. And so we'll talk more about that, but just wanted to put it out there that we have some dedicated organizations who are really ready to roll up their sleeves and be even a deeper partner with us so that we can have an even greater impact on poverty. They're already doing the work, but as you know, when you're doing it in silos, it's hard to measure.
I agree.
So we're looking at bringing the groups together to determine how best to have an even greater and measurable impact on poverty.
Mayor Pro Tem, I think that's a great idea, and I'm looking forward to your leadership on that issue. With that, we seem to be right on time for lunch. Mr. Manager, are we Are we ready to take a small break, or?
Yes, sir. We're prepared. Lunch is available to everybody. We've got a 30-minute break on the schedule. I think the timing is
Yeah.
perfect, Mr. Mayor.
So let's plan on coming back and gaveling back in at noon. And look, if you're still eating, we'll just have a working lunch and we'll go from there. I think this morning's been tremendously successful. I appreciate everybody's input, and let's keep up the positive energy. Ladies and gentlemen, let me call the City Commission Annual Retreat back to order. And while we're getting settled and getting ready to get back in, let me just take a second to recognize all of the incredible men and women that work for the City of Tallahassee. And let me tell you how much we appreciate y'all. I know we've got a lot of the leadership from the different departments that are here, and I hope that you'll carry our message to everyone that works with the City of Tallahassee family. Your commission really appreciates you. Y'all do an amazing job in whatever field you're in and the work that you do. And that's what makes Tallahassee such an incredible place to live, work, and play. And that's why we're nationally and internationally recognized for being an incredible community. So I don't want to let this moment pass us without saying a tremendous thank you for all the hard work and dedication that y'all do for the City of Tallahassee. And with that, Mr. Manager, if I could turn it back over to you so that we can move forward with our Clean Energy Plan update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and we really appreciate the flow and the feedback. I think it's been great so far, and so we've covered two of the areas that we had scheduled for presentation. We have a third remaining on the Clean Energy Plan update. And let me recognize a couple individuals that aren't here with us that have been really immersed in this. They're a little under the weather, so they couldn't make it today. But Michael Olson, I think most of you guys know Michael. He's been doing a yeoman's job, making sure we communicate and get feedback from our community, and he's an integral part of the plan itself, as well as Tony Guillen, our general manager of electric. I know they're here with us in spirit and probably listening, but they're not present today. But I wanted to recognize the work that they have done. David Byrne, our Assistant General Manager of our electric utility. David, if there's something that, a job that has existed in the utilities, David has done it, by the way. So he is an expert in so many different ways. He's been involved in the preparation of the plan. There's been a lot of work done. You talked about this at length in 2019. We have been engaging, getting information, preparing, because what we know is this is a long-term plan. And you'll recall the resolution that you passed in 2019 said that we would have a clean energy future by 2050. It had interim goals, including transportation goals. We actually acted upon some things before the plan has even been complete, but I think all of us would recognize any plan of that duration, it can't be that precise. It'll have near-term, mid-term, long-term goals, and some of which are outside of our control that involves technology and things. And so the plan will be very comprehensive, but it will be one that we have to weigh in on and give good direction. And we're nearing the completion of that. David will provide more update, but we're within months, not a long time, of bringing that in and bringing it to your attention. But we felt like the retreat was a great opportunity to give it profile, to get your feedback and kind of hear where we have been. And so David's going to provide the presentation, and we'll be prepared to continue the discussion as we go through it. So, Mr. Mayor, with that, I'll turn it over to David Byrne.
David, thank you so much.
Okay, well, thanks to the city manager for the introduction. Mayor and commissioners, my mic loud enough?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
yes,
good.
Sir.
Mayor and commissioners, thanks for the opportunity to provide this update. Before I kind of dive in, I wanted to look at a little bit about where we've come from. The city's had a long history of good environmental stewardship, going back to, well, before my time here even. We've been promoting customer energy efficiency programs since the 1980s. They're extremely popular, continue to be so. We've increased the efficiency of our generating fleet to the point where now the utility emits less CO2 than it did in 1990, even though our customers use 50% more energy since that time. And we have, okay, thank you. All right, is that better for everybody? All right.
I think
So-
Bill's trying to make sure the people
Okay.
online can hear.
Okay. And we've now implemented and constructed 2 large solar farms at our airport. They are the largest solar farms at any airport in the entire country. And we're on our way towards advancing the amount of clean energy that we're producing in our system. But as is normal, we don't get to rest on that. And the resolution that the city manager described just in the introduction says that we will move towards 100% clean energy by the year 2050. And it's a very bold and exciting goal, and we're here to tell you about how we're approaching that now. So bring this up. Since the resolution was passed in 2019, we've completed our technical study. We've conducted several rounds of public engagement, and we're continuing to make strides in implementation of clean energy and efficiency on our system. For example, we installed a record number of rooftop solar installations in 2022, and we're making steady progress on the conversion of our fleet to electric. There's I want to make a point here that what I'm about to, the report I'm giving you is going to be the final update on the planning before we move towards defining policy and program goals and implementing the strategy. But looking ahead, we're pivoting from that planning stage and getting ready to make up the policy that we will call the Clean Energy Roadmap. And that's really what I'm here to tell you about today, that roadmap. We'll come back to you, I think, around April with recommendations. And those recommendations will include near-term actions we can see in the next 3 to 5 years. If you think about that, the closer in time we are to where we're taking action, the more predictable things will be, right? And the longer term out there, there's less certainty. We'll be able to define certain actions that we know we can take that are appropriate for our energy system and for our city in the next 3 to 5 years, while continuing to watch the marketplace, watch how technology evolves, watch how prices change, watch how the interests in our community change over time as we move towards the ultimate goal out in 2050. You'll recall that in our last update in May of 2022, we provided an in-depth look at the technical study. A brief summary is that we included various what we call supply side or power resources options to our studies. Those are, for example, solar farms, energy storage, other clean resources such as energy from external renewables like wind that we can get from the Midwest. So those are part of our study. Also, of course, demand side options, the customer options that we use and we've been promoting for years and years. Those are going to continue to be a major part of how we approach clean energy. And of course, we include various forecasts of the future. How are EVs going to penetrate the market? How are the technologies that enable us to store energy going to penetrate in the market? And of course, the forecast for how much energy people are going to use as we do on a regular basis. We need to incorporate all these into a study model and use this model to identify various paths forward that will give us what I like to call a robust set of choices. Robust meaning that in many future scenarios, we can still be confident that the plan will work for our city and for our utilities. So that's real important. So the study is now complete and it's under a final review. We the key takeaways are that the studies are going to inform the program and policy recommendations that we'll make. And then as we flip up to the next slide here, I got a little ahead of myself. The recommendations that we make, though, are, I think I want to point out that they're heavily influenced by our community through an extensive stakeholder process we've gone through. Kind of a lot like, I heard earlier today during the Southside Action Plan presentation that a tremendous amount of community input was taken to run that plan. Well, we've done very similarly a stakeholder process. It's now in its, we've completed a third round of stakeholder input. And this input is a series of forums in person. We did a lot of virtual during the pandemic. But we've spent time with a wide range of stakeholder groups throughout our community, businesses, customers, various neighborhoods, different sections of town, social organizations, all throughout, trying to get a very, very broad and diverse set of inputs on how the city should move forward with this clean energy project, because it really does affect our whole community, what we're going to do. And so we wouldn't want to just step forward without their input. And one other thing, we had another way people were able to provide input was through an online survey that was on our website, and we got over 2,400 respondents with input on that website. So gave us a lot of information that we can use and include as part of the planning assignment we had. And all that went into how are we going to determine policies and program updates that we can make as part of our roadmap. Another thing that I sometimes forget to mention is that doing these things with large stakeholder groups and significant planning often will put us in position to be eligible to compete for some of the now significant federal funding money that's available. And it's always good, and this commission has helped us stay ahead of the game. I think with 2019 resolution, we are really a step ahead of everybody else out there, and I think that's going to put us in good position to benefit in that area. We still have a number of stakeholder groups to meet up with, but anticipate that that process will be completed by March. So our clean energy roadmap, the next step is building out the clean energy roadmap. And again, it'll be informed by the technical studies and shaped by our community input. So the policy and program recommendations that are being, they're being organized by, in two ways, by sector. So there's utility options, there's consumer options, and community-wide options. And within each of these, the recommendations are going to be further organized by measure. So we've got the measures that are related to energy efficiency and demand-side management. These are the programs that we've been running effectively for a long time. Renewable energy, these are like adding new solar to our system, or more recent developments, and what we'll be expecting to be a significant part of the implementation going forward. And the transportation sector, which will be a very interesting piece for us, because we don't necessarily control how transportation works, but there's a lot of things that we can do policy-wise, program-wise, to incentivize people making the right choices. So moving on to, I'm sorry, I got a little ahead of myself there. I did want to give a little bit more detail on how we're going forward with these. For example, as I mentioned, the efficiency and demand-side management are our longest running programs, so they're kind of our base in what we're doing in the program. We're going to continue to look at those opportunities. Those will include, like for the utility increased efficiency at our power plants. And whenever any new resources are added, they should be more efficient than the previous ones. In our community, we've got programs that can support efficient transportation options like e-bikes and protecting our tree canopies. For the consumer, one of the things that we're intending to do is to do another review. Last time we reviewed it in detail was 2017, but a review of all of our customer energy efficiency incentive programs. And we think we can review this assessment and identify where maybe some of the programs we've been doing in the past need to change, be modified, where we can add new ones that really fit better with the new direction we have with Clean Energy Plan. On renewable energy, the utility, we're going to add, certainly going to be adding new solar and finding ways to make that work in our system in a reliable and cost-effective way. Community-wide, there's going to be a focus on promoting equity and overcoming the energy burden through clean energy technologies. And a really good example of something we're doing right now, we have a program, it's called the SEED, Solar Energy Equity Development. And it's a combination of local organizations working with some Department of Energy grant money that we're receiving, working in a few neighborhoods in Griffin, Frenchtown, and Bond to identify homes where we could potentially implement anywhere from 25 to 50 rooftop solar systems to try to help bring clean energy to these communities and at the same time lower the energy burden that people have to put up with. I think as we explore that, it'll lead to additional programs, additional similar programs, and continue to meet that goal of equity and energy burden relief. And on the consumer side, another real winner here, the adoption of rooftop solar using the city's net metering program. There's been a significant expansion of the number of solar installations on the rooftops in Tallahassee. In fact, in the last year, we had 355 applications for permit for them. That's almost a new solar system every day of the year. And so it's really growing strong. And these are going to make up a significant portion of our energy, our clean energy resource as we go forward. Finally, transportation. For the utility, I think, some of the things we're doing are continuing to, we heard this earlier, continuing to build out our electric vehicle fleet. The Star Metro bus fleet is continuing to grow in the use of electric vehicles, battery vehicles. Fleet is increasing the number, I think we're at 15% now, of either electric, hybrid, or CNG light-duty vehicles. Community-wide, we're expanding the use of public electric vehicle charging. In fact, if you have the time after this meeting, if you step into the garage across the street from the hotel, there's a set that we installed about 2 years ago over there in the garage for their public EV charging on our new city EV ordinance. So they're there. We're putting them in more garages. We're also developing a larger project to put high-speed charging in throughout the community. Well, we heard that a little earlier from Thomas's presentation, and it's going to be able to. The idea is we can't tell people what kind of vehicles they're going to drive, but we can make it so they're more willing to make the clean energy choice.
That's right.
And what we're doing is bringing the availability of electric charging to this community. So we'll have, when this project is complete, we'll have 4 or 5 locations where customers can charge their cars at a very high rate of speed. We call that level 3 charging. It's kind of the fastest EV charging there is out there right now in the market, and that's under development right now. We're working with a number of folks throughout the city in different departments to implement this because it's really a very broad implementation. So that's just a few of the examples that we're looking to do. Again, we hope that we can have this bundle of recommendations and policy actions to you by April, May, the spring timeframe. So again, the planning effort is near complete. We're shifting towards developing policy and program recommendations. These will lead towards a roadmap to the future with a short-term set of actions and a longer-term plan that you can expect we'll continue to revise as we learn more about the future, as we learn more about prices for technologies, how technology development advances, what our customers are interested in, how other markets that are outside of our control, like that EV market. We don't know how many EVs are going to be on the road 25 years from now. They're certainly growing. It'll depend on a lot of things in the marketplace, but how that turns out, we'll know more about as time passes, and we'll continue to adapt our plan to meet those changes. And all this, of course, would continue to be shaped with additional community input. So to recap, I just want to conclude with saying that we'll continue clean energy implementation in our system. We're going to wrap up the stakeholder discussions in the next couple of months. We'll prepare the recommendations for this commission and bring those to you shortly. And ultimately, develop these into what we'll call a clean energy roadmap to be released later on this year, spring, summer of this year. And with that, I will like to entertain any questions.
David, thank you for a great presentation. And yeah, I'm real proud to be your mayor and work with you. We are the best, if not one of the top, 2 or 3 in the country from a complete perspective of our energy goals, our environmental goals, #1 public utility in the nation. I tell people all the time, correct me if I'm wrong, if we were a small country, because of our emissions reductions, we would have surpassed the Kyoto Protocol and the Paris Accord before it was ratified before any country, because of the actions that have been taken by previous commissions as well. Y'all are doing an absolutely phenomenal job, and keep up with it. Let's open it up and have a conversation. Commissioner Richardson and Commissioner Matlow.
Thank you. Just a question, Mr. Mayor. I have had individuals come to me, and I know they may have met with some of the other commissioners by now, but the city manager as well. And so my question is, and their issue was the continued use of natural gas and us incentivizing the use of natural gas and natural gas appliances. What do you all see as the future of natural gas in our clean energy plan?
Let me answer that, David. You fill in the gaps. Commissioner Richardson, thank you for asking that question. It's a good question, and I had the opportunity to meet with a couple different groups last week.
Okay.
Same topic, coincidental, right? So they're kind of parallel pathing this thing. One of them, Grant Gerhardt, I think we all know him. He's a great asset to our community. And their question is, how does natural gas fit into our future in its most basic form? In particular, we have rebates to encourage people to connect to natural gas. We have rebates that encourage people to buy more energy efficient electric equipment. We have rebates for people to install new windows, a whole host of rebates that we've had for, as David said, now decades, probably 4 decades. And they're all aimed at either energy efficiency or eliminating or reducing the need to build the next power plant. And so we had a great conversation. And what we shared with them is we know we're in a journey, and we know the natural gas system plays a role in that journey ultimately. And if you took all that demand that's on the natural gas system and you moved it to electric today, we couldn't meet that need. We'd have to build another power plant. We'd use more electricity. So there's a merger that has to happen. David talked about working with our consultants. It will be an engineering equation. The answer is it will be an engineering equation. Do you continue to do it? Some may not, because I would expect that. And some of you may do even more, right? Okay. So, I could go into details, but we probably have 24 different rebates in a variety. And so one of the questions they asked, and so I'm glad you asked this so I could share it.
Right.
They're like, hey, we don't want to wait though. We're anxious for you guys to take a look at it and make decisions. And we shared with them, David was there, Michael Olson, and they were the experts there. We felt like the timing was good. You see on your screen that we expect to bring decision points to the City Commission in April.
Okay.
I think that's a pretty decent timeline. That could shift here or there, but not a lot, right? I think we're coming in for a landing. At that time, I would expect we will include kind of a review of our rebates, what should remain, what should go, the reasons it should. A big reason would be we don't want to build another central station power plant. So we want to keep that in clear focus. We want to continue to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas we emit. So all these things will be calculated. And the good news is there's a lot of information to calculate. And so that'll be the path we shared with them. I shared with at least one of them, maybe both. Commissioner Richardson, you had brought this up in the past. Are we going to have some form of an incentive beyond the creation of this charging network incentive for people to add electric charging at home?
Right.
And I said I would expect that to be an element of what we bring forward. That timing is good too. And we took the opportunity to say, because if you have an electric car, the very best place for you to charge it is at home at night.
Right.
Because it doesn't add to the need for a new power plant. It's going to be the least cost for everybody, the utility and the customers. And so the good news is I think they received it well. We were right at the doorstep of these decisions.
Okay.
And so that, will we step into a future? Yes. Will natural gas be part of that journey? I'm very confident it will be. But how does it fit and what's the logic? Does it meet our goals? And so we shared that with them. I think they received it well, and I'm looking forward to a few months from now as we get the final details.
Okay.
Commissioner Richardson?
I'm done. That was my question.
Commissioner Matlow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, David. Great presentation. We very much look forward to seeing the final product this spring. I did want to ask a question. Late last year, we saw that Florida Power and Light expressed interest in our clean energy plan. Have there been any other further conversations or information along those lines?
What are you referring to that they had interest in our energy plan?
There was a news article that they both met at the mayor's office where I believe the interest was the clean energy plan was what was reported.
Right.
They were also expressing interest in city commission districts. We saw in Jacksonville a pretty hostile takeover or
Elections
attempt
are
to take
over.
over.
They weren't involved. We sell additional energy, don't we, off of our grid system?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I think I can generally answer it. So, in fact, last year we sold to Florida Power and Light. It's a very dynamic grid. We have an open line of communication with Florida Power and Light and a variety of topics. We sit on some committees together. We have talked to them about their future. They've talked about our future. I'm not aware of any current conversations, but it is a very dynamic, open dialogue in the utility business. We sit on reliability committees together, things of this nature, but I'm not aware of any current conversations.
Okay, yeah, thank you, that's helpful. And I think we gotta keep that top of mind. We know our investor-owned utilities have their eyesights on our public utilities for acquisition, whether it's in the next few years or later down the line. And I think as we develop our clean energy plan, where we're gonna get power for, how we're gonna generate it, that's gotta be protecting public power, protecting the City of Tallahassee's utility has to be at the forefront of that conversation, because we can't, as we push for 100% renewable energy, we have the power. We are the utility. We can get it done, but it's concerning when we see these segues into our community. It's concerning what we've seen across the state with both on the political side of the spectrum as well as the attempts on acquisition. So I think it's just going to be an important part of our conversation as we move forward with our clean energy plan that we're considering. We're also protecting the future of our public utility along the way. And lastly, I'm going to have to leave a little early. I have a private matter to attend to, but I will look forward to official business at the 3 o'clock meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I want to say that, David, always great job. Thank you all for what it is that you're doing and the attention that you're giving to this. Also, I want us to always keep in mind, and I know you are, those who may not be ready to jump when it's time to jump. those in our community who may not be able to afford to convert so easily. So we got to make sure that when we do this, we've got to make sure that we have provisions, rebates or whatever, to make sure that those who cannot afford to retrofit or do some other things are able to slide into the renewable energy world, to clean energy like the rest of us. So when we start talking about I met with one and I'm scheduled to meet with the other one, we start talking about these different rebates. We've got to make sure that homes that are, older, inefficient homes are taken care of right now for what they need to even get to where we're trying to go with clean energy. So I'm just saying, like, we don't need to snatch the rug from other folks. We need to do it in a very, and the term, I look out here and I see James Barnes in a very concierge way and caring way. That's the word he gave us some time ago about how we treat our customers and how we treat our residents. I want to make sure that we carry that over in everything that we do, because everyone, let me just say it like I said, grandmama and them not going to be ready to just turn off the gas and go put a solar panel on the house. So we've got to make sure we have provisions for that. That's the protection that I want to make sure that we pay attention to. I leave it to you experts to make sure that we continue to provide this public utility. We're the envy of other cities. So I don't see selling your power for what? I mean, there's no value. There's no money that could pay for selling your power,
Right.
Either figuratively or literally. So I'm sure that we will all work to make sure that we're good. But I just want to make sure that for the least of these, we're making sure that we're doing things to help them make this transition. And so I wanted to say that. I also wanted to mention that when I'm driving I-10 and I see all of the solar panels out there on, I think it's in Swanee.
Oh, yeah.
Over in Swanee. It looks beautiful. But when I think about the housing that could be put out there, it's not beautiful anymore. So I want to make sure that here in our city that I'm glad that we have the solar farms at the airport, because most people don't want to build a house at the airport. So I'm glad we're out that way. So when we're looking at more places to expand to, we want to make sure that we're not having a footprint where we should be having house prints, blueprints, So want to keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor? Can I
Commissioner
give
Richardson.
an example of what Commissioner Williams-Cox is talking about? I recently looked into solar energy myself and having solar panels installed on my house. And, that's an expense in and of itself. But the guy that I talked to, we've got 2 trees that sit right next to our house. And he told me I would have to take down one of the trees in order to get the solar panels. Well, to take down that tree is $2,500. So I had to make a choice, first of all, to take down a live oak tree that, provides us shade, or get the solar panels. And, my wife and I chose to keep the tree, because even at the time, we didn't have $2,500 to take down the tree and afford the solar panels. So I think that's the point that you're trying to make, Commissioner Williams-Cox, that we just need to make sure that this is going to be affordable for everybody at some point. And then the other question that I had, if I can ask a very quick question. We depend on our electric utility for a large portion of our city revenue. If we become more energy efficient, I would assume that at some point we're going to see a decrease in revenue from our electric utility. And if that is the case, how do we make up for that in a budget where 50% of our property is off the tax roll?
Yeah, certainly sales generate revenue. Part of our expectation with the plan is that we're transitioning the electric utility to clean energy to continue to provide the energy that our customers need. Interestingly, as you were mentioning about, your situation with a tree and, and with solar and rooftop solar, there's many other unique situations that people have why, either they can't have solar or they would like to, but it's costly because of this. And, I was listening to the presentation earlier that I think on the South Side strategy is talking about there's some big things we need to handle and there's some one at a time things we need to handle. I think it's the same application with the clean energy plan. So there's going to be some contribution to clean energy from individuals who it's very cost effective and easy for them to add renewable energy. And the rest it's going to be taken care of in a large scale by the utility system. And we'll find locations and sites where we can do things at scale at the lowest cost. And solar is getting to be a very low-cost option for us, so I'm excited about that future.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I add to that, Commissioner Richardson? I think the questions and conversation are excellent, and we are very cognizant of that as we bring this back to you. The reality of it is we need to make our very best effort for everyone to participate equally, however that takes place. We know those with means have more ability to head down this path. We want to be guarded in terms of subsidies and cross-subsidization where those that can afford it the least actually end up paying more. But yet we all achieve a renewable energy future.
Okay.
We are incorporating that. We'll make sure we're working toward that end, and so that push and pull. So we as collectively as a community move forward with a renewable energy future, whether you have energy or solar panels on your house and you don't, that we all enjoy that benefit that it creates for the environment.
Okay.
David, I want to thank you for a great presentation. I am so proud of our electric utility. I am sorry Commissioner Matlow left before I had a chance to respond. I think it's really dangerous for this false narrative that was used during campaign season that the electric utility is for sale. To continue. I hope as a commission we can come together and move forward on behalf of this entire community without the rhetoric. I think we're all tired of it. I think we're done with it, and it doesn't serve the public any good. All 5 of us have been on the record publicly. We know what we have here, and we've got the best, the #1 in the country. And so we need to do everything and guide all of our energy and resources, no pun intended, to supporting the City of Tallahassee and our electric utility. Keep up the great work. And by the way, for all the men and women, not only in your department, but in all departments that went down after the hurricane hit in Southwest Florida this past fall to help out and restore power in other communities, we're continuously thankful for everything that everyone does. David,
I'll let them know.
And for Mr. Barnes and his group and what they do here locally, working with our local customers, I mean, we've got a top-notch organization that we're all proud of.
Concierge.
Concierge, there you go. Okay, so that wraps up the agenda. Do we have anything else, Mr. Manager, on, or shall we just open it up for comment?
Yes, sir. No more scheduled presentation.
Great. Commissioner Porter, Commissioner Richardson, Mayor Pro Tem, I mean, now's the time, publicly noticed. We have the opportunity to talk about what's on your mind. If there's anything of discussion you want to bring up, Commissioner Porter?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if we wanted to, we were having a conversation about affordable housing when we were talking about the South Side Action Plan, and in particular, how we're going to get creative, how we're going to meet this need. And for me, I think a specific priority, and I know, I believe of all of us, and things we've heard from members of the community, is how we're going to increase the number of extremely low income and low income affordable housing, which right now is, sort of a small number of what we're doing. I mean, I think it was in the ballpark of, a little over 200 of the over 2,500 units that are in the pipeline for the next couple of years are actually for low and extremely low income residents. And those are the kinds, and the reason for that is because they require a lot more subsidies you need a lot more money to make up where developers are not making their money because the rent just doesn't cover the development costs. And I think we all know that. I mean, your discussions, it just doesn't, you don't make a profit when you're building affordable housing unless there are substantial subsidies. So I don't know if that's something that our staff have already been working on, kind of how we're going to do that. Because I agree, I mean, ideally, those subsidies should come and have come from the federal government, from the state government, and over time, those, I mean, it's just been cut and cut and cut and cut. And I was last week at the Florida Regional Planning Association, and we were getting an update from our lobbyist, Ron Book, about what they're expecting as far as affordable housing this session and from the governor. And supposedly, that is going to be one of their main issues. The Senate president has already said that is her main concern, and so hopefully there will be more dollars available to local governments from the state, and I think we're seeing too from the federal government. So I was just wondering if there's our ideas that staff have or where we're going with that. And as we know too, there are things that we can do that are policy related that have nothing to do with subsidies that can still either increase the affordable housing stock or maintain the affordable housing stock that we have. And certain things that other cities are doing, whether it's rental registries, whether it's right to counsel, required mediation before eviction. There are other tools too that require some public dollars to implement, but not at the level that we're talking, you know, in the hundreds of millions of dollars to bring about these kinds of the units themselves. So is there any, whether it's our city manager or Abena, any comment on any of those questions?
Any comment?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. That definitely keeps a lot of us up at night. But I think as you've heard, we have some really good progress with the tools that you all have put in place. And it takes some time for us to see the full scope of how this works, just because the industry is just slow to respond, literally in building units and implementing processes. But we've seen tremendous growth in this. What we've shared at various workshops is the need to look at this full spectrum. And we know that the need exists across the whole spectrum. Of course, we have some particular pressure points, and as you talk about extremely low income, and just for the good of anybody else listening, that's around that 33% area median income. That population is actually typically on fixed income. You might be talking about a retired, elderly person that's collecting disability or Social Security, or you're talking about somebody that might be emerging out of homelessness. When we talk about federal programs for subsidy, we look at low income that actually begins, as HUD defines it, at 80% AMI and below. And a lot of the metrics that we share with you about very low income, that's at 60% AMI, and that's about the average, $15 per hour working individual. That puts you right around that 60% AMI. So some of the information that the city manager shared with you last night, for example, that's over 1,000 of the units that are targeted for 60% AMI or below. And I share that to say it is a spectrum. We do have projects that come online that set aside units for different portions of the AMI in the same development. A developer might say, yes, it's not profitable to do the entire development for one AMI, and they spread it out. In fact, they built that into some of our federal and state tax incentives. They have to do a certain portion set aside for various incomes. So I think that just goes to show that on the private side, on the public side, we know that we need to develop a spectrum. The other consideration is that we don't want to concentrate any one income at any one level. And so even within a development, you would have folks that are trying to build in a mixed income, a group of residents that can live together and enjoy the property all together. What is really working well and what we hear constantly from developers is this focused attention that they get. And I would use concierge to borrow from James's Barnes shop as well, that we come alongside them at the front. And what they're most impressed by and what we consistently hear is this expedited permitting and processing, the development flexibilities that in a lot of other communities, they work so hard to even get through the door to have some consideration, and we offer it at the gate. Some of the density bonuses is making a difference for them. And so we want to continue to lean in that because we're starting to see the work. There have been a few projects that we brought in front of you where there's an additional financial incentive that has been asked of us. And probably with the exception of one or two, these have been relatively small compared to the overall size. And we feel that with the programs and the tools you've given us, we're able to leverage a lot of opportunities. I don't think we've had to turn anybody away with an idea. So I do think that we have to continue to use every toolkit, every tool in our toolkit. We have to continue to leverage where we're uniquely positioned in policy to be able to make a difference. But it is going to take some time. We're seeing some support from the federal and the state level as well, where because this is decades in the making of a crisis, because it's been tragically underfunded, we're starting to see that start to reverse a little bit in the state. And our Sadowski funding, for example, that has always been cut off, and now we're starting to see the state return back to some level of funding. It's not 100%, but at least it has increased it, so we're starting to see increased revenue. You all made some actions during our joint workshop with the county as well that we're moving forward with, including the inclusionary housing ordinance and amending that so we can capture more developments and require them to incorporate this. It used to focus on homeownership, but we've added multifamily rental developments as well. So we're going to start to see those bear fruit in the next couple of years, again, because of the sort of policy levers that we've been able to pull.
Mr. Manager.
Mr. Mayor, Bennett just touched on it, but I don't think it can be overstated in the response to Commissioner Porter's question. We're looking to expand Bennett has a toolkit and I have a toolbox, whichever one it is. We'll expand the toolbox. The inclusionary housing direction that you've put us on jointly with the county, that's a pretty big deal. You were early out of the gate adopting an inclusionary housing ordinance. We have a lot of experience in the canopy. That's a single-family development that resulted in about 60 units. We've got another example in Landon Hills now with another 30 or so units. But as you saw earlier, we've got 1,000 multi-family units in the pipe, and that is and that'll even grow. That's a pretty robust number. If the city commission can take action and incentivize those developers without money, but probably through density bonuses or just an ordinance trigger, you could potentially add a lot of housing through the organic development process that's inclusionary for renters, not limited to homeowners. And I think that's a big get, and then we can define, how that works. We've had the occasion to talk to any number of developers that come to town, and they're exploring, if they want to invest here, and we've tested it. Wayne Tedder and I, Wayne's the expert, we've said, hey, the city commission's really intent on affordable housing, and, would you be willing, because this is in the absence of an ordinance today, to include certified affordable housing in your development? They don't really blink an eye, to be honest with you. I think that is something that may be commonplace outside the state of Florida, and it could result in significant new numbers of affordable units in that process. And so we're on the verge of that. I don't know how long before we bring you that inclusionary housing ordinance, but that's an action you can take that I think that'll bear a lot of fruit.
Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, and that sounds promising, and I look forward to seeing that. So specifically, though, because I understand we've got a multi-pronged approach. There's a lot of, as you say, different tools in the toolbox that we're using. But do we have a specific strategy for increasing the number of low and extremely low income units?
That's an interesting let me jump in. Let's have a conversation. So, the city is not the recognized federal entity for low income, very low income, Section 8, whether it's brick and mortar or whether it's voucher. That's Tallahassee Housing Authority. That's why I said earlier, we need to have an honest conversation about where's the housing authority going above and beyond Orange Avenue, and how does that look in our community? We are not in the business, correct me if I'm wrong, of owning and managing properties at any price point. We're not in the business of building, managing, owning properties in any price point, nor are we equipped to take over that function. So I'm looking at the experts that I'm assuming the answer to Commissioner Porter's question, I got you, I'm coming right back. The answer to Commissioner Porter's question is no. There is no strategy for the city to begin building, managing, owning, and operating low income and very low income. We need to work with our federally recognized partners.
Yes, that's correct. So the Housing Authority is created with the federal mandate to develop and operate public housing. And so they do tend to focus most of their programs at the 30% AMI and the 50% AMI. We, of course, work very closely with them, and we support their programs, and this commission has approved multiple times direct cash investment into their program. And I think what we're seeing at the national level is this departure, or at least recognition that the public housing as it was designed, decades ago, has been a failed experiment in terms of the continued investment. And so the Orange Avenue development, for example, is a public-private partnership that seeks to invest more into dilapidated units, actually add more units to it. And it is subsidized at various levels, and the city and the CRA, the county, the state, and the federal government have all been participant in that. And so I think, Commissioner, to your question, that is part of the tool box that we have opportunities to leverage various resources we have to support those developments that does bring online low and extremely low income units as part of the mix.
Commissioner Porter?
Thank you. And to be clear, my question was not, are we building extremely low or low income units? My understanding, and for the record, I mean, we could be doing that. We may not be currently in the business of doing that, but there are cities who do that. I agree, and I think everyone agrees, that the public housing units and the way that we approached that in the 70s and 80s and thereon were failed experiments. But we've also seen across the country and across the world instances where that is not a failed experiment, where there have been a lot of changes, and we talk about it more, the word really isn't, the term isn't really public housing anymore so much as social housing, and that's something that has a lot of adaptations. But my question was specifically, what is the city doing to incentivize or support that? Do we, and more importantly, do we have a strategy? Because, and that can include working with the Housing Authority, and should include. What I hear from them is that they are getting no additional funding. They're struggling to keep the vouchers they have, from the federal government. That's not coming their way. I agree. I think we need to have a conversation formally with them, or a presentation. So my question very specifically, which I feel has not really been answered, is do we have a specific strategy for how we, wherever it comes from, are trying to increase that number beyond what it is now for low and extremely low income housing units?
Mr. Manager?
I think, I understand the question. I think the answer is here, and in fact, you've included that in your strategic plan. So when we talk about strategy, you have strategic priorities. This is a priority of the City Commission. We've been executing that priority. We talked about toolkits and toolboxes to use every resource available to us to increase the amount of affordable housing. We know that the conversation has been very focused on certified income-based affordable housing, and we're laser focused on that. I don't think the conversation stops there, but that's where we've been laser focused on. We know there's a stratification within that income base, and we're achieving that. So the strategic priority is codified in the strategic plan. The execution of it is being carried out broadly by the organization in different departments. We have continued to add tools in the toolbox that you've approved. And so as we hear what we need to add to be able to bring new units online, we've added them. So the strategy is the priority of the commission to add affordable housing. Certified affordable housing in particular, with the stratification in different incomes, and we continue to add tools. That's been the approach that's been effective. We know it's effective because we compare notes with our sister cities. If there's another tool that's needed, we'll bring that to your attention. And, it's been a very fluid and dynamic process. Commissioner Porter, you mentioned that you felt like the state was going to engage in this year. I think they probably will. It may not be what we want necessarily, but I think they will, because this is not a topic limited to the city of Tallahassee. We know the area median income for a new house in Tallahassee, single-family home is $300,000. We know in the state it's $450,000. This is a pressure point around the state, probably more acutely occurring, around the state than it is in the city. But the strategy has been to execute the commission's priority to add stock, using all the resources available to us and adding new resources as they're identified and needed. And so I think you see the evidence of that is the growing numbers of units that we're seeing, how we bring them about, and each one's kind of unique. And so I think that will continue as we learn what we need, what we've got to add. We'll do it very strategically.
Commissioner Porter,
Thank you.
I'm not familiar with other cities that are in the business. Out of our peer cities, who is building and operating?
Not in Florida.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. What we do have are cities that are also the housing authority,
Okay.
either because they've taken over the local housing authority or they initialized it and by charter to be embedded in their city. So there's some across the country that serve both as the housing authority and the municipal government. So
But you're referring like the New York cities, the larger municipalities that have the capacity to absorb the housing. Okay.
Yeah, but they've organized it that way.
Do we have other municipalities that are our size that we can look to across the country that are?
We can certainly. look
Commissioner
and be-
Porter, you referenced other cities. If you got anybody in mind that we can look at,
I would have to look through my notes, but I can send that in an email.
that'd be great. Yeah. Any other comment? Commissioner Williams-Cox, Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I want to say this. Any strategy that staff implements has to be approved by us.
Right.
So we either have approved some strategies to meet our goals, or we're being advised of some things that we need to consider. So I wanted to be clear that we're not relying on staff to approve any strategies. We're asking you to bring us information, and we find our own information through research, but nothing happens unless this body approves it in a majority vote.
Right.
So Commissioner Porter, I appreciate your passion and your concern here, but, and I know that I've heard that you've said that we are not doing all that we can do and that we're misrepresenting what we are doing. Now, I would ask, please enlighten me on what else you think, in your experience, that we could be doing that we're not doing, and let's put it in action. Because as far as I know, in the committees that I've been involved in across this state, and prior to coming to the commission, knowing about the rating of the Sandowski funds, I'm not sure what else we could be doing more than what we are doing right now. And I know that there have been those who have come to us strongly encouraging us to set aside $12 million. I wish I had $12 million that we could just set aside for nothing but that. But I think that we just need to be very careful when we start saying things like this, that we send the right message to our community, that we're doing the best we can with what we have. Again, I go back to the 4.1 mil. We're run by revenue generated, grants that we go seeking, and every now and again we remain in the governor's budget. So those are our funding sources to do what we need to do here. So I'm open to hear it. If there's anything else, Commissioner Porter, that we should be doing, that you know will work for this, or you believe will work for the city of Tallahassee, do tell. so that we can, let's look into it, because I'm sure that we're not here spinning our wheels just out of, to say we're doing something. I'm thinking of getting news from everywhere that I can get news from and bringing it forward so that we can look at it. So if there's something else we could be doing, please put it on the table.
Commissioner Porter?
Thank you. I do think we're not doing everything we can be doing. I don't believe we are misrepresenting what we're doing, but I do think there's a lot more we could be doing. I mentioned a few earlier, and so did Commissioner Matlow. Rent stabilization tied to CPI is something that cities are considering that is legal in the state of Florida. Rental registries, we can have it so that folks who have tenants who own property are required to register with the city so that we can inspect those homes. Cities do it totally differently, but whether it's every 3 years, every 5 years, there's an inspection making sure that that rental home is up to code, is in good condition, is livable. That also gives us a source of collecting data about what is out there. There are cities, and these are in Florida, we are limited in what we can do, and I'm sure whatever support we get from the state will come with strings attached, will come with limiting our local powers. There are cities that, that provide local legal support, right to counsel. There are cities that make it so that the ordinance, that basically you can, and for all of these, there are exemptions that specify the difference between kind of mom and pop landlords who might have fewer than 8 or fewer units, and when we're talking about major developers, large multifamily apartment complexes, units, we can do, wow, there's a lot we can be doing, and I wasn't expected to review all of this.
Have you shared this with staff? Have you shared this with staff?
I have shared this with staff, and I don't always feel like I have the same access to staff or that the ideas that I have had really come back to us.
Right.
But
That's
there
okay,
are
buddy.
a lot of things that we can do.
I'm good, I'm just asking.
The rent control issue actually was one of the first motions made by Commissioner Porter when elected. If you recall, it got a second, but it failed on a 3-2 vote. That issue has already been dealt with by the city commissioner, or at least it was 2 years ago. That's a philosophical issue that we all will decide where we fall on that. Now, I will say that I think that we can all agree that rental assistance, which I know is a hot issue right now as well. Ben, I know with, in particular, one constituent that we've been working with, is an issue that that's something that we can consider additional funding for our rental assistance program that does help people out of tough times. But to answer your question, Mayor Pro Tem, yes, we've taken a vote on rent control, and that failed 3-2 at the commission. Commissioner Porter.
Yeah, and I want to specify too that rent stabilization is slightly different from rent control, and it's usually under some sort of temporary basis, and it's tied to the consumer price index. So it's not just, you can never charge anyone more than, $500. And the last thing I'll say is, it is true, and I send, just like we all do, residents to Abena, to Dr. Thomas, and what I hear from a lot of the nonprofit providers who provide this assistance is they just have run out of funding. They only have a pot of money, and it's kind of first come, first serve, and that doesn't have to come from us, but it certainly can. So I think there are a lot of really cool options. People are getting incredibly creative, and there's a lot of opportunities. And I agree too, and I have observed there are a lot of different philosophies and approaches about how we approach housing, how involved we get, the market itself. There are certain things that we agree the public sector exists to provide. And what we do is because there's not a profit in doing it. If there were a profit, the private sector would be doing it. So that's why we step in. And I don't think we disagree about the importance of housing. We all understand that. And I'm happy to have those, philosophical, ideological debates about what the role of local government is in the housing arena.
Well, I think, again, and I'm coming to you, Commissioner Richardson, I'm looking forward to that conversation with Tallahassee Housing Authority about
Of
their,
course.
their capital improvement project, 5-year outlook, especially after our joint project over on Orange Avenue, which I think is going to be a tremendous success. And I think that we are all heading in the same direction, that we know we want to make a positive difference. We're just trying to figure out how. I know for a fact that I do not see the city of Tallahassee, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I do not see the city of Tallahassee becoming the federally recognized entity from Housing and Urban Development on a national level, taking over the Housing Authority here. I think that we should strengthen our relationship with the Housing Authority and continue to work with them as much as we possibly can. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I would just say that, whatever funding, services that we provide, Commissioner Porter, or increase, you're talking about additional revenue. And, either we've held our tax rate at 4.1 for a number of, I think we did increase it once since I've been on the commission in almost 10 years now. So the question would then become, if we're going to move more into the housing arena, if we're not going to further tax our residents, then where does that money come from? What is cut? What is eliminated? Because that's what you then come down to. If we're going to get more into
Right.
the housing arena, when there are other organizations like the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium, Habitat for Humanity, and others, where that is their responsibility. And I'm just not sure I feel comfortable with our municipality moving more than we already are in that direction. I understand the tremendous need for housing in our community, but I think we have partners that we have partnered with over the years that we can continue that relationship to increase that stock of affordable housing. And then we have to understand those people who are at that income level who actually, and we've had this conversation even at TLC, their preference is not to own. They're looking for rental.
Right.
Because there are responsibilities that come with
yeah.
home ownership, y'all, let me tell you. And so that's the other part of the equation. You have people at that income level that just may not be interested in home ownership, or especially single-family residential home ownership. They may be interested in renting, if it's affordable at that level, or multifamily units. And that's what we're starting to look at, even with the Lenders Consortium, is considering not just the single-family residences, but also multifamily as well.
Commissioner Porter.
And thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I totally agree, Commissioner Richardson. And I do think that, as we know, and as you know, having served in different bodies and certainly longer than I have, that what we do is a lot about our priorities. And there are certain things that if you don't raise the millage rate, you give up if you are shifting your priorities. And so that is the kind of discussion that we have when we're having this discussion, whether it's about housing, whether it's about public transit, whatever it's about. I do believe that there are tools that we're already using, like inclusionary housing, that do not cost us money to provide an incentive. And there are a lot of tools like that that do work. And the partnerships we have are great as well. And I know a lot of them would, one, already depend on money from the city to some extent or another. We might not be talking about millions, but other incentives and financial ways that we support them. That is another avenue. But I can prepare some and maybe talk a little bit more about this at another date. Because, there's a lot of good work happening. I've worked really hard to try and piece all the housing elements together, because there's a lot. I mean, I've searched some of my notes. You know, we've got homelessness prevention, we've got rapid rehousing, we've got permanent supportive housing, permanent housing, home rehabilitation, housing stability, emergency sheltering. I mean, there's all kinds of things that we know we're talking about when we're talking about housing. And I think the critical piece too is that we have this rental housing as well. I'm a renter. I don't think I can afford to be a homeowner at this point in my life, making what I do. And that there are a lot of people who just choose to never be homeowners because they don't want that responsibility, even if they can afford it. So whatever it is we're doing, considering the spectrum, which I believe we are doing currently, is going to be important. But I look forward to these conversations and how we can support the Housing Authority and how we can leverage, like we already have, those state and federal dollars, because I know that is key to what we're already doing, and we wouldn't, and thank God for the money that's still left that we're getting, because it's making a difference. And I know for all of us how heartbreaking it is when we get those emails and I feel totally helpless. You know, I wish that I could just, and people think we can. People think that we can just get that email and put them in a house within a few days, and obviously, we all know how that works. But I encourage all of us, you know, when we think about how important our homes are to us, that they are a retreat, that they are a place of safety where we are with our families, where we read, you know, and when I think about people who don't have that, for whatever reason, it really is heartbreaking. And so I'm very proud of us for making this a priority, because of how personal I know it is to us and the residents of Tallahassee. Thank you.
But at the same time, I think, and honestly, this is my opinion, I think we send mixed messages when we sit here and talk about the priority of housing in every price point and talk about how we need new units. And then we have these units that we are in partnership with, that we are bringing resources to the table, and they pass on a 3-2 vote. When we have development projects like the English property, that I believe at one point the faith-based community was involved in providing affordable workforce housing in Tallahassee, and it passes on a 3-2 vote. So I think that we have to align our actions with what we're saying as well as a body, so that it meets the goals of our community moving forward. And I've been frustrated in the past that we say one thing and then these projects continuously get voted down, or they're passed on a 3-2, 3-2, 3-2 is really what's happening. And so I think that we should work harder as a body, the 5 of us, to truly align this priority and move forward. I really do. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure exactly do you have projects in mind that I didn't support that were affordable housing projects?
English property passed on a 3-2 vote. We had the D.R. Horton comprehensive
You mean just the
plan
PUD?
for expanding the PUD, to expand the urban services boundary that passed at the city level on a 3-2 vote. The Wilani discussion with the inclusionary housing and how we're expanding the process out there, all passed on
Sure.
the 3-2.
May I comment? Do you not think that I'm sincere when I say I care about affordable housing?
No, I didn't say that at all. I just said that we've got projects that have been passing on a 3-2, and we need to add stock in our community. And so when we put together these projects and we have our resources at the table, and then they're passing on a 3-2, it just sends a mixed message to the community.
Certainly, I don't necessarily agree with that perspective. I have reasons that I've stated for why I wasn't a part of every single one of those votes. But I think that a person, just as there are different views on this table, I know Commissioner Richardson has said that local housing, or that local government has a more limited role in affordable housing. That is his view. I don't share that same view, but I never doubt that his view has anything to do with how much he cares about affordable housing. So, I would hope that the people in this room, and that as we communicate to the public, that it is not the message that speak for myself, that I do not care about affordable housing, but that the strategies I would take are different. And I understand how the supply works. And it is true that we need to build more housing. We need to build more housing. And the more you build, there is the trickle-down effect of having more housing stock that can become more affordable. It's interesting when you see the brownstones in New York City that are some of the most expensive housing you can get. Those used to be public housing. You very frequently see when there's urban infill and, that over time, projects that were, or housing that were expensive are now affordable, and the reverse. But I didn't vote for that for a very specific reason that has nothing to do with affordable housing. So I just want that to be clear. People have different perspectives, different strategies, and that has nothing to do with sending a mixed message. That has to do with, we don't have to conform to one way of approaching affordable housing. That's why we have 5 of us to have those discussions. And if I'm wrong, I'm glad that, if I'm ever wrong, which I'm sure I have been, I'm glad that I have other people who are more experienced and who and the projects that pass that I may have voted against, I hope that I'm proven wrong and that I will be able to learn and see that happen. And that's why this is the democratic process. I don't always get what I want. You all already know that. And I hope that those projects are successful.
Great. Any other comments? Anything? Now's the time. Put it on the table. Mayor Pro Tem?
I want to ask the city manager, Mr. Gold, any and all suggestions or ideas that you receive are being shared with us?
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
Yes, ma'am, and I mentioned that earlier. Even in the conversation, I hear different components. So we've been very, very focused on adding more affordable units. And we are, fighting that hand-to-hand combat every day. People come to our town, they talk to us, developers want to invest, and we've been able to add the tools we need to bring them to our community. Anything that is beyond our ability, we're bringing that to you, and we've done it, and you've made those decisions. We'll continue to do that, and so, any discussion that we're missing something, certainly, if we become aware of that, we're bringing it to you. We have, and you've taken action on those.
Okay, I wanted to make sure, because I don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure that if it's coming, we're getting it so that we can then do something with it, because I do want to do whatever we can do that is within our authority, our ability, and legal, Madam Attorney, to help with this crisis. And as I heard Abena say, it's decades in the making. So we're not going to be able to flip a switch, and it happens. But I'm going to go back to a comment that I made earlier today, and I'm going to bring this in for the landing. When we talk about public housing, I'm going to go back to that. The Tallahassee Housing Authority, they're calling this development mixed housing, because the connotation that has been associated with public housing has not been a good one. And you're right, there have been some, I guess, an experiment or whatever it was, but these are people's lives that have altered them forever based on this failed experiment. And I don't want to be a part of another failed experiment of stacking people on top of one another who may need to be spread out into more positive environments, is where I'm going with that. In the 70s or however long ago it was, they were called the projects. We still have productive citizens in our community who came from that. But we don't want to continue to create those kinds of environments and those kinds of climates. So I feel very strong that Ms. Brenda Williams, who is not here, that we're going to talk about what the Tallahassee Housing Authority, the Tallahassee Lending Consortium, whatever they're doing to help our community with this housing crisis for low and income or what have you. They need to be in the room.
That's right.
They need to be a part of the conversation in the county as well, because I have this conversation all the time. The city gets beat up all the time about what we ain't doing. I'm talking like Proctor. What we ain't doing. Does anybody ever go across the street and tell the county what they ain't doing? Not as much as they come tell us what we ain't doing. We are trying, for sure. We are doing our level best. That's why all these people are in this room today, because they showed up today to try again today. They show up every day to try again. We may make it, we may not, but I think that all of our hearts are in the right place, Commissioner Porter. All of yours as well is in the right place. I appreciate that. But I think that we do come from some different lived experiences. And I'm coming from that, and you're coming from yours, and together we're gonna do the best we can for our city. So I think that the discussion today has been my part to try to make sure of that. But I think that we've got to move together in a positive manner. And, you know, all of this, whatever it is that's out there, it needs to stay out there, because in here, we're working on solutions. That's right. And we're gonna do what we need to do to move our city forward. And so thank you all who are on board for that. And for those of you who are not on board, get on board.
Yeah. And Mr. Mayor, I would just add to that, I guess too, Commissioner Williams-Cox talked about lived experience and being involved in this community and seeing how this community has evolved over the years. Commissioner Porter, we have come a mighty long ways in the city of Tallahassee. Are we where maybe we need to be? We're not, but we're ahead of just about everybody else in terms of what we provide for our citizens in a community where almost 50% of our property is off the tax roll. But yet we're still providing the housing that we're providing. And what I'm saying is if we start to move in that direction, then are we gonna have those 100 parks that we talk about?
Right.
Are we gonna have a transportation system that we already subsidize because it's not carrying its full weight? Are we gonna limit garbage collection? And then we're gonna have a whole nother set of issues that people are gonna be coming to us about, that my garbage isn't being picked up twice a week. And you're talking about housing, I don't wanna pay for somebody to live in a, so if you see where I'm going with that, those are the kinds of issues that we're gonna have to struggle with if that's the direction that we want to go in as a community. But I can tell you, in my lived experience in Tallahassee, we have come a long ways, but we've got to partner with the others. I think in terms of the low income and very low income housing, we need to find out, because I think the Housing Authority ought to be the lead organization in that respect, and we support them like we did with Orange Avenue. They wouldn't have been able to do that without the assistance that we gave them. That's our role. But for us to come in and say, hey, we'll pay for half the cost of the redevelopment of the Orange Avenue apartments, well, if we do that, something is going to have to give in other areas of the services that our residents, our tax-paying residents, expect us to provide. And so that's the view that I take. And so that's why I am as involved as I am with the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium and Habitat and all those other organizations, the Housing Authority, all those other organizations that take a lead role in the housing arena. And I don't think that that's the role of a municipality. And so that's where I am on that, and the support that I give, and I think we've appropriately given to those organizations that take that lead role.
Well said. Any other comments? Anything else to come before the board? Anything? Okay, so it is, it's 1:25. Great job today, Mr. Manager. Let me give the other appointments the opportunity. Madam Attorney, Mr. Treasurer Clerk. I know we have the Inspector General here. Anything to come before us?
Great.
We're good?
Wow.
Wonderful, good, excellent. Well, we certainly do appreciate y'all. 2023, look, I know these are tough discussions, and I know it looks like sometimes, we don't get along, but I think that we are all in it to move this community forward. 2023 is going to be an amazing year. We have our first City Commission meeting of the year in an hour and a half, so we will see everybody in chambers at 3 o'clock. We are adjourned from the annual retreat.